Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That is Austin Jacobsen. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, Austin?
Oh, just traveling, getting back, and getting ready to travel some more. We started our Christmas endeavors over the past weekend, and as I was telling you before we got started, I missed every single important and impactful play of sports over the weekend. But it's fine. We made it work, and we're catching the recaps right now and just trying to recover as best we can. What about you? Do you start any holiday travel or anything like that yet?
No, I don't really travel, which is good. That's a major plus. But
it's good to not be from the podunk parts of the state.
It's good to not have family outside of the area you live in, is what I'll say, because that's a pain for sure. But no, I do have some family in Texas. They came up for Thanksgiving, so we did like a little mini Christmas with them back at Thanksgiving. But no, we'll get to it on Wednesday, and then that'll be it for us as far as holidays are concerned. But no, it's good to be here. I believe we're the only live radio show in the state today and this week at all.
Bang.
But this will be our final live show of the year. You can still catch the best ofs that Shane has done a great job putting together, and catch all the nonsense. I like to listen to those just because I don't know what he's ever going to put in there. And also because, and you know this because I've had this conversation with you, sometimes I forget what's happened on the show immediately after it happens.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Like, there's so much kind of nonsense that goes on that it just disappears from my brain immediately. So,
yeah, and you never know in the moment what's going to be like
a thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because as we found out over the past week, too, you never know, like, when something happens and everybody latches onto it later, and then you just kind of move on with it. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. They'll also be available on podcasts, too. So you'll be able to re-listen to those best ofs in case you can't listen to them live.
That's right. And, like, in the moment, sometimes you're like, oh, that's a thing that just happened or whatever. And then it sort of creates a life of its own. Not that I'm talking about anything very specific that happened last week. But, you don't always realize what's going to have a life of its own.
Yeah.
So that's always fun. And
it's game week.
It is.
It's been 10 years since we've said that. Well, 8
years. It's been 8 years. It feels like the meme or the gif of the old lady in the Titanic. It's been 84 years. It's been a while since Nebraska was playing in a bowl game. We will have that on Saturday, so that's exciting. And we heard from Coach Rule over the weekend as well. But we'll talk to our guy Damon Benning at 8:00. Speaking of bowl games, he's not with us because they're traveling this morning.
And weirdly enough, every single time I come on here, I have a bone to pick with Damon.
What did Damon do this time?
Well, last week he called me out. He figured out my game of he said it very eloquently, and I can't tell you how many people I shared that clip with when I went back to Kearney over the weekend. Like, my parents, I showed it to them, and they were like, Damon Benning said this about you? And I was like, yes. And my mom was like, so he, like, knows you that well? And I was like, I mean, like, yeah, we interact. Like, obviously we're coworkers.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, he's got you down to a T. Like, that's exactly what you do. Yeah. So I'm more concerned about how much more Damon could figure out about me. So I think it's best to keep him at arm's length at this point.
You gotta keep him at a distance.
Yeah. I can't be getting too close to DB.
That is a gift that DB has, that he can kind of like figure out the essence of a person pretty quickly. And so you're just like, I don't know how I feel about that. Especially if you're not, like, some people aren't self-aware enough that when he says it, you're like, oh, that's not right, is it? And then you're like, oh, crap. No, it is.
Now, speaking of DB, and I want to ask him this later too, but is he a pizza guy? Is he going to be going? So he's not going to be going hard on pizza. So what's he going to be? I know they have all their catered meals and they're going to be, feeding him well and all that stuff. But he's going to have some freelance stuff, right?
Just meat.
Street meat?
Just all meat.
All street meat.
That's all he's going to. He doesn't, even when he ate carbs, pizza was not his thing.
Yeah.
He'll do the toppings.
He's like Al Michaels.
What's that?
He's like Al Michaels. Doesn't eat a vegetable?
Yeah, does. Oh, yeah, never eats a vegetable. Used to eat some carbs, but doesn't eat any carbs now.
Good for him.
Mostly just meat. So yeah, I'm sure he'll find a good steakhouse somewhere near the hotel and get after it that way. But yeah, he'll join us at 8:00. We'll talk to him about just about whatever, because that's kind of what we do. At 8:45, we'll talk to Scott Mutryn. He is the sideline analyst for Boston College. So we'll get a little preview of the Boston College Golden Eagles. 9 a.m. we will talk to Ben Kercheval. He is the editor for college football for CBS Sports. Get a little recap of the college football playoff this weekend. And then 9:45, we moved our Friday friend Tim Verghese to Monday this week because there were some portal commits for Nebraska over the weekend. Wanted to get his thought. He's got a really good eye in terms of talent evaluation and those types of things. So I wanted to talk to Tim, see what he thinks about Nebraska's portal additions. But it is the Monday before Christmas. We've got 2 days left here.
Mm-hmm.
Austin, I know you were in Kearney doing family stuff over the weekend.
Yep.
Do you guys have like do you have Christmas traditions that you're like locked in on, or is it just kind of, hey, we go hang out with everybody?
Yeah.
There's nothing really.
I guess our traditions are mostly just traveling.
That's
just
terrible.
mileage.
That's the worst.
It's the worst.
It's the worst tradition you could have.
So both sides of my parents, like my grandparents, are in Broken Bow.
Okay.
Which, to all of our ESPN 590 listeners, I'm just terribly sorry you had to Google a town in Nebraska, which I think Ravi is just pulling up right now.
I know what it is. I was trying to figure out how far from here it is.
From here, I think it's like 3.5, maybe closer to 4 hours from here. It's a Highway 2 trip all the way through.
That's not. It's not great, but it's not terrible.
No. The worst part is that I've been conditioned being in all parts of the state so far that no matter how far you go to visit my family, you're always still in the state. So you don't even get the enjoyable part of being like, oh, I went to Missouri. Like, I traveled to this. Nope. Just drove 4 hours to the center part of the same state that I already live in.
That is like dead center Nebraska right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Custer County. Yep.
There we go.
So, we travel out there. We'll travel back and forth. And then you add on my girlfriend's side that we have to go back to southeast Nebraska. So we're just traversing the state, trying to get our miles per gallon in as best we can.
Where are they from?
Adams.
Adams Central?
No, like Adams, Nebraska. Adams Central's in Hastings.
Is it?
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, ESPN Tri-City's now mad at you, Ravi.
I did not know that.
You didn't know Adams Central was in Hastings?
I had no idea.
Wow.
I had no idea.
Ravi, we should do a show on the road, and I'll take you to all the western parts of the state that you need to see. I'll take you to Scotts Bluff. You get to see Chimney Rock. Carhenge. You'd love Alliance.
Pass.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
We love our fine friends out in central and western Nebraska, but I mean, I've seen Chimney Rock, because I've driven through on the way to like Colorado or, I have friends from McCook in college, so went out to McCook for one of my buddies. I'm sure it's a nice place to grow up.
You know that you're from a small town. And people have good town pride when they talk about how nice their Walmart is.
Oh, yeah.
If they're like, no, our Walmart's, it's not like a normal Walmart. That's when you're like, oh, okay.
You're like, no,
I get what you're saying.
It's like a good Walmart.
We were that way when I grew up in Sydney. We had a Safeway. And we were like, oh, no, you need to go to the Safeway.
No. Don't go to the family fair. Go to the Safeway. We wouldn't be caught dead in the Dollar General.
True.
No, I've been to a lot of different parts of our fine state. I did not realize that Adams Central and Adams were two different places.
Yes, yeah. So there's the school is Freeman. So,
okay.
Yeah.
This is very confusing.
Which, by the way, the best part of my weekend was all of my girlfriend's family is from that rural part of that state. So all of their schools are consolidated or hyphenated or slashed or whatever you want to say. So I struck up the heartwarming conversation of, now being the Omaha native. I was like, well, it's just not fair that these like small private schools have to compete against 4 or 5 different towns in the consolidated, programs. Because we were talking about Norris. My girlfriend's brother is an assistant coach for the Waverly basketball team.
Okay.
So he was talking about, their performance, had to play Norris. They had a tough challenge. They did not get the win against the Norris Titans. But I brought up, if Norris was just Firth, the one town that they're in, who knows how good they would be?
It's true.
We don't know. People don't want to talk about that, but it is what it is. And, of course, I am, for those who can't see via stream, I am being a little sarcastic, obviously. But I don't think her family completely understood my point. And I felt the heat of some ravaged conversation there for a little bit there. It was kind of tough. I was arguing with them about hyphenated towns and adding too many towns in, and they're like, "Oh, well, all those schools."
You got to be real careful with consolidation talk in small towns because it's personal, and I get it, right? I totally understand. Headley says he was also in Kearney this weekend.
Oh, nice.
Surprised you guys didn't run into each other.
Sorry, Headley.
Kobe apparently also from Broken Bow or in that neck of the woods.
Kobe's from Broken Bow?
He says that neck of the woods.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. Sometimes when you're in like western or central Nebraska, they'll say my neck of the woods, and it's like 2 hours from them.
Yes.
But it's like, it's, in general.
Right. Well, you can be
it's like a giraffe neck, right? Like it's a very long neck of the woods.
Right. I had friends that I went to college with that were like, oh, your family's from Broken Bow? Like, I'm from Mullen. They're like 2 hours apart from each other. And Mullen only has like a Dollar General. And I was like, listen, we're not from the same place. You can't be saying that sort of thing about me.
Hot Danger says Hastings is in Adams County. Good to know. That makes sense.
Yes, there you go. So that's
the connection there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Hot Danger. I thought they were just randomly naming things after guys named Adam, and I was like, well, what are we doing here?
You can really get down the rabbit hole of Nebraska traveling when there's an Elm Creek, an Elk Creek, there's like a Alda and an Alma, and then there's like so much more like down that line. Our chat, all the ESPN Tri-City folks, I know are just going to go hard on that sort of stuff. But
Headley says he thinks he saw you grabbing a Cinnabon at the pumping pantry.
That's not true. I would never be caught at a pumping pantry. That's nowhere close to true. Last time I was at a pumping pantry was when I was in Holdridge. They have a wonderful pumping pantry down there.
I am Casey's man.
Yeah.
Kobe, we're not hating on Western Nebraska. It's just, there's not a lot to do in McCook.
True, yes. That's the other big part about being from a small town. If you're like, our Casey's is really good.
Yes.
That's when.
And you hate on the other small towns around you because their Casey's not as good or whatever. Right? If
Casey's Pizza is your favorite pizza in the world, you are from a small town.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to say it's my favorite pizza in the world. I did live in Ashland for a little while. The breakfast pizza is very good.
Very good, yes.
Like, legitimately.
It's a staple of this region.
Legitimately very good breakfast pizza there. So no hate for McCook. We love our friends in McCook. I've got very good friends from McCook, some of my dearest friends from McCook, Nebraska. So we appreciate them. And I'm glad they got out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's a lovely little town.
I'm what am I trying to say here? I'm projecting my feelings because in high school, McCook football was.
Oh, they were a wagon.
Yeah, and I mean
they have been for much of the last.
Recently, not as tough, but yes, they were
for like several decades before that.
Yeah, they were fantastic, and they had this one, just GD tradition. Every time that they would score the ensuing kickoff, the next kickoff, they would play Crazy Train.
Oh, yeah.
And so 1 week, because we had a pretty decent team, sophomore, junior year, we went out to McCook. We're like, this is the year. We're finally going to beat McCook. We're finally going to do it. And so I'll never forget, Coach Todd Eckert, every single day in practice, we played Crazy Train for like hours on end on the loudest volume. He's like, you're only going to hear this during the week. You're only going to hear this during the week. And so we get out there. Opening kickoff, they're playing Crazy Train, and all of us are just putting up one finger because we're like, one time. They're only going to play one time. They returned the opening kickoff back, so we had to hear it twice.
I bet you heard it more than once, didn't you?
We heard it a couple times.
You heard it more than
once.
Time.
That was bad. I do love a good football tradition, which I'm to transverse into that. College football playoff, did it not feel weird? Those home games, I thought everybody else was like agreeing online. They were like, oh, it's great to have college football this late at home games, home environments. The 11 a.m. Penn State game looked like one of the sleepiest Penn State atmospheres I've ever seen for a game of that magnitude. It's very odd to me.
Maybe, but I'm going to blame that on Penn State. That's a them problem.
James Franklin, thank you.
Yes. No, so there's a couple things here. So that can be true, and I think it is mostly true. Mm-hmm. The second thing is I still love it. Like, I love the whole thing. I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend, and it was basically halfway through the Notre Dame game where we were just like, you know what? I'm all the way in. This is great. I know there wasn't a single good game, not a one. And I'm still like, this is the best. I love it. This is incredible. I agree that the 11 a.m. was kind of like, whatever. But there's ways to fix that, right? Mm-hmm. I would love it if you had kind of a March Madness style where maybe you got multiple like staggered games going at the same time.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
You know, so maybe you start one at like a 1 o'clock and then a 2:30 and then a 4 and then a 6 or whatever. So you've got kind of games going on at the same time. So that way this is kind of the dirty little secret about March Madness that everybody forgets. There is a boatload of blowouts.
Yes.
Like a ton of them.
Yep.
You know why we don't notice? Because there's 8 games going on at the same time, so we just find the good one.
And then everyone goes to the same game at the same time.
Yes.
Everybody gives up on the same games and moves the same game.
And
That's
so
good theory.
we
like
don't
that.
care that there's mostly blowouts, especially in the first 2 rounds. Let's be honest.
Yes.
It is mostly blowouts.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care because there's like 3 good games that capture our attention, and they happen to overlap with the blowout. So we just ignore the blowout, go to the good game. So that's all you have to figure out. You have to figure out the timing of it. They need to fix the seating, too. The seating's all goofy. I think that'll get done this year, or before next year. But it's going to be great. I'm excited about it. Like, I love it already.
I was thinking about that. And, the big conversation heading into the playoffs before we started the first round was, Oregon's path has now significantly gotten harder because they have to play one of the 2 better teams in the first round, regardless of the outcome in their first round. Could you just resolve that by reseeding and just doing a new college football playoff bracket? The first 4 teams are already in, right? Those are pre-established. You say, okay, conference champion winners, our top 4 conference winners get byes regardless. But then the winners of the next round are reseeded to then evaluate. So the playoff committee would then have to do a second reseeding of who wins and who gets placed wherever on like that Sunday night.
So I actually think the conference winners getting the byes is part of the problem.
I don't disagree.
I think you just need to get rid of that. Just seed it normally, like you would an NCAA basketball tournament, right?
Yep.
You don't have to be a conference champion to be a number 1 seed. You don't have to be just the 4 best teams. That would fix it, because I saw some projected brackets of if they had done it normally, and it's way better. Like the matchups are way better. They make way more sense. You're still going to get some blowouts, but it makes way more sense just to seed it a strict 1 through 12 and then go from there. I also think, and somebody in here, I can't remember who it was, maybe Hot Danger, said, I think the home game should be for the next round as well. I don't want to go to bowl sites until the semis.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, give me 2 rounds of home games.
I don't hate that.
I would love that, because why would getting a bye then mean you don't get a bowl game, home game? That's dumb.
Right.
Give me 2 rounds of home games.
And we have a long enough time period to get there. And I hate how
like you didn't have to wait 2 weeks. You could have played these games like 10 days after the conference championships. So that would have been like last week, basically. And then you could play the next ones 10 days out, which would basically be this coming week, like around Christmas, right? So you'd have boom, boom, and then you'd still be set up for the schedule that you've got for the semifinals and finals. Like, nobody cares. It's fine.
And things that I don't understand is why these games, like I get you want to put the pageantry of a bigger name bowl game, the traditional, like the Rose Bowl and all these sort of things with the college football playoff. But why do we only get the Rose Bowl being the playoff quarterfinal? That seems like wrong to me. Like I loved the Rose Bowl when it was a Big Ten, Pac-10, and you got to be able to watch that on New Year's Day, and it was a beautiful pageantry game. It was one of the best games of college football, regardless of who was playing in it. And now it's just known as the college football quarterfinal game. It seems like we just kind of disregard the tradition of these monumental games that had built up centuries worth of history and just are like, nope, you're actually a college football playoff game now, and that's all that you get.
Yeah, so this might be a hot take. And by the way, Jack, I did watch North Dakota State and South Dakota State, and that was an incredible game, so I'm with you there, bud. I will say I don't care about the Rose Bowl at all. Wow. I know that's sacrilegious as a Big Ten member, but I liked it growing up. I liked watching it. I remember, one of my some of my best memories are, like there was like I think Achilles Smith from Oregon played in a Rose Bowl in like the mid 90s. You had like a Joey Harrington Rose Bowl in there, which was a lot of fun. And then
I'll never forget the DeAnthony Thomas 6 carries, like 200 yards against Wisconsin.
Yeah, there were some really good Oregon ones in there. Michigan, Washington State, when they were playing and they were going for a national championship, and the same year Nebraska was going for a national championship. That was a lot of fun. Like, I have very fond memories of Rose Bowls, but what I don't care about is all the, like, do the Rose Parade, do the whole thing. But the Rose Bowl's always been very, like, self-important. And I think that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
Like, it's always been I mean, there was even a whole thing. They almost submarined this entire playoff because if they didn't get a play at 4:30 on New Year's Day. Like, that's so dumb.
That's fair.
Like, they're very self-important.
Is this a specific gripe on the Rose Bowl, or are you saying this in general? Like Orange Bowl or Fiesta Bowl, you tying all those together?
I mean, I think those should be the semifinal games because I want home sites for the quarters.
Yeah.
But I don't really care where the bowl games are. Like, at this point with the college football playoff, calling one of the games a certain bowl game doesn't really matter to me at all.
Yeah.
I just want the best playoff possible. A lot of stuff going on in the chat here. Somebody said that I'm advocating for a 64-team college football playoff. I do want a 16. I am a 16 advocate. I always have been. And I think that probably is where it ends up. And that's fine. 12 is great. I love the 12 already. I'm already in on it. But 16 is kind of where I always thought it would go and where it should go. And I think that does give you an opportunity to kind of stagger the games a little bit.
So 64 with playing games?
Yeah, let's do it. You just stop
68,
You just stop the season like around Halloween. And you play like 6 or 7 regular games. Just pretend like it's COVID.
Yeah.
And then immediately into the playoff. Let's go. 64 teams. Half of Division I football makes it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, in that case, Nebraska would have been looking pretty good.
Nebraska would have had an opportunity.
Listen, if we end the season October 5th, we're talking like 2 or 3 seed in that 64 team. That's not bad at all.
That's what I'm
5 and 1.
Let's do it.
I'm in.
Let's get after it.
Forget Boston College.
That's Austin. I'm Ravi. We will be back in just a little bit. We'll get into some college football playoff. We'll get into Nebraska's additions in the transfer portal. There was also a bunch of NFL games this weekend. There's a ton to get to. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. Shane's over there producing for us. Sasha stopped by for a minute. I have no idea why, but we always appreciate Sasha and her contributions. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Austin Jacobsen. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and I'm reminding you to get out to the Lawrence Gardens Bright Nights exhibition now through the end of the year. That's the 31st, in case you lost track of the calendar here. I know the holidays have snuck up on us a little bit, but make sure you get out to lawrencegardens.org to get your tickets. Check out their hours. See when Santa's going to be out there. It's going to be pretty nice this week. You can go outside, have a little fire pit, roast some marshmallows, make s'mores, do the whole thing. Get your picture taken in front of the 20-foot poinsettia tree. There's all sorts of things to do. Some inside, some outside. It's a great experience. Make sure you get to lawrencegardens.org to get your tickets. All right, so we've got some chatter in the old YouTube chat here, and somebody kind of jokingly said that I want a 64-team playoff, which I don't exactly.
Right.
But here's what I will say. If proportionally there were as many teams in the college football playoff as there are in the NCAA basketball tournament, we'd be looking at about 24 teams. There are 68 teams that make the NCAA basketball tournament. There are 352 Division I basketball teams. That ends up being I forgot what the number was, but I did the math on it. That ends up equating to about 24 teams out of the 134 FBS football teams. So you've got 10 conferences. You could put in every conference champion and then have 14 at-larges. The way you have 32 conference champions and then 36 at-larges. The numbers kind of work out. Now, some of those games are going to be very bad. Just full disclosure there, right? But if you want to do proportionally, that's sort of what I'm talking about with the being able to have enough games to mask the bad ones.
Yeah.
You would have enough games that you would get a couple good ones. You'd have a couple opportunities for upsets or at least close games. And then you would have everybody just gloss over the bad ones because occasionally you would have Appalachian State beat up on Tennessee and be like, oh, my God, this is incredible. And you'd forget about the fact that SMU just got boat raced by Penn State.
Yes.
That's kind of proportionally what we would be talking about. Now, I don't think they're going to 24 anytime soon.
No.
I think 16 is the number that's always made sense to me, but 64 is a little silly. But if you wanted to be proportional, 24 is about the sweet spot.
And the college football disparity is this is something that's been well known for quite some time, especially in the portal era, is really it's always felt like 12 down has been a different breed than
Sure.
13 to 25.
Sure.
But I do like the idea of 24 because you assume that you can look at most top 25 polls and just be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you think about it too, the 4 major power conferences all go by the same metric of no divisions, the 2 best teams. So you could almost say if you make your conference championship game, you are automatically in.
Pretty much.
And that's 16 teams right there. Yeah, 8 more teams here and there. I'm not saying that every single people would have loved to see Colorado nationally. People would have loved to see Colorado
great
get in. Kansas State the same in the Big 12. In the Big 10, you would have gotten Illinois in.
You would have South Carolina in.
South Carolina. The SEC would have a heyday with that because then they could make an argument for 8 teams.
Why don't we have all of our teams in? You know why, SEC? Because you're a Ponzi scheme. It's fake. None of it's real.
What if the solution for this is going against the traditional college football model that started in the 90s of conference championship week, and we just instead assign regular season conference championships?
I'm fine with that.
And then we start playoffs.
There's no point for conference champions anymore.
At this point, no.
Like for conference championship games.
Yes.
Obviously, you can crown a conference champion in the regular season, but there's really no reason for because it was a money grab. That's all it was.
Yep.
That's fine. But now you have a better money grab.
Like, the SEC would still find a way to not play a 9th game.
Yeah, they would play like 4 conference season games. And I maybe have been a little harsh on the SEC calling them a Ponzi scheme. It's actually probably more like cryptocurrency, where the value
the Hawk coin.
Yes, it's Doge, if you will. Literally all the value, and listen, I'm not anti-crypto or anything here, but all the value of crypto is because we decided it has value.
Yes, right.
It's not based on anything. There is no underlying value to it. It's just because we decided that it has value.
Getting very deep this morning.
The SEC is only good because we decided that it's good.
Because we've given it value.
Because ESPN has decided to give it value.
Yeah.
And that's my only gripe. My only gripe about the college football playoff this year is the narrative started immediately that, since SMU got blown out by Penn State, then obviously an extra SEC team should have got in.
Yeah.
Guess what? SEC teams had an opportunity again, and Alabama got boat raced by Oklahoma.
Yeah, and lost at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Arguably the hardest school in America to win at because it's constantly under construction.
Northwestern would like a win. But
fair.
You have to play next to a lake. You might lose your football.
I can't wait. I pray we get one. If there's any way Northwestern get a home playoff game next year, could you imagine that fog rolling in? I mean, you're playing in 10 inches of fog.
It would be the most expensive ticket in the world because there's only 12 of them. They would be like $30,000 tickets because only 8 people can go besides the friends and family of a quarterback.
That would be perfect if it's like Northwestern the 8 and Alabama the 9. And it's just the richest people in Alabama can fly to Chicago, then drive to Evanston and just start looking at the lake. The John Travolta meme of just like,
it's literally,
is this college football?
It's literally just Nick Saban and his 3 closest friends are the only ones that can afford
Alabama Jones, baby.
But yeah, so that's my only complaint is the narrative started immediately, right?
And it started immediately this weekend.
It started Friday night when Indiana got beat up by Notre Dame. Well, guess what? Notre Dame might be the best team in the country. I know Texas looked good. I know Ohio State looked good. Going into this thing, I picked Notre Dame to win a national championship. I think they've looked the best for most of the year. Mm-hmm. And listen, I saw Todd McShay say this on his podcast. If that's the version of Ohio State you're going to guarantee me, then yeah, that's the best team in the country.
Yep.
We've seen it exactly one time this year, and it was this weekend. Mm-hmm. Great to be playing your best ball right now.
At
Terrific. Home. I also don't know how much of that has to do with the fact that I don't think Tennessee's that good.
Yeah.
How long have we – me and DB have said this all year. Tennessee can't score. Good physical defensive team. They have not been able to score all year.
Yeah, but they scored 70 points 1 week and week 2 or something.
Yeah, against Austin P or someone.
Yeah. Hey, let's stop the Austin chatter. All right, calm down now. Come on now. Come on.
They played Fairmount University or somewhere. Yeah. I don't even think that's a university. That's a hotel. I'm pretty sure. They played
Marriott Bonvoy.
They played the Hampton Inn staff.
Double treat chocolate chip cookie.
And they put up 70 points on them. And we're like, oh my God, Tennessee. And then we're just lost our minds. And somehow they were never in question to make the college football playoff.
And you're not wrong. It's crazy that we just saw 3 different shades of orange get into the playoff. And we're like, yep. Powerhouses, they deserve to get in.
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's like, well, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't I don't sit here and look at the SEC and be like, oh, they definitely should have got an extra team in because Indiana got beat. Indiana lost one game all year.
Yeah, that fallacy of logic confuses me to no end. Just because you just watched a team lose does not mean that they did not deserve to be in the playoff. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's the same conversation.
You can't play the results because otherwise you're sitting there and you're going to be like, okay, well, let's just put the top 12 recruiting rankings teams in the playoff. Like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
You can't just sit here and be like, well, Alabama's more talented. They lost 3 games.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be penalized more for being more talented and losing that much?
In college basketball, if every single top seed in March Madness never lost a game to an unranked opponent, there would never be a number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Because they always have a stumble. There's always a game in which they follow apart,
100%.
whatever. But, like, that logic does not follow. And I understand the argument because it's apples to apples. Alabama is probably just going to roll over Michigan in their ReliaQuest Bowl or whatever. But fine.
But that's because Michigan's bad. Like that.
Yes. Let that be. But on the same note, it's shocking how quiet the conversation then got by Saturday night when Ohio State was up 35-10.
We're just beating the brains out of Tennessee.
They put in a quarterback that was 33. That's an automatic loss. If your backup wears 2 digits and one of them doesn't start with a 1, that's crazy.
And honestly, if it weren't for that interception in the end zone that I still don't think was an interception by Tennessee, that game could have been so much uglier.
Yes.
Like, it was 21-0 headed in its way for like 60-0.
Yep.
That game, they were never in that game. So, but Tennessee doesn't deserve to. We don't have to talk about how the third best team in the SEC just got their heads beat in. Okay, that makes plenty of sense. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and reminding you that the Omaha Supernova season is about to kick off. It'll be here before you know it. January 10th, that's a Friday at CHI Health Center. They'll take on the Atlanta Vibe. You'll have world-class talent, Olympians, NCAA champions, All-Americans, and the pro debuts of some local superstars as well right here in the volleyball state. Make sure you get to supernovas.com to get your tickets for January 10th, the home opener of the Omaha Supernovas, your defending Professional Volleyball Federation champion. So make sure you get out there for that. I'm sure Austin and I will both be there as well.
Yeah, I need my volleyball fix.
Yeah?
Yeah. I really get into the fall season. I'm not as integrated as into all the sports like DB is, but volleyball is one, especially now living in the same household with my girlfriend. It makes a huge difference when I'm able to be able to watch all the matches and actually get into it. So I'm excited being in Omaha now and being able to go down to CHI and go see some good matches moving forward.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun there. I just want quick programming note. I know we've got DB coming up here at 8:00. Sam was not banned or anything. He'll be back with us on January 2nd. He had some travel conflicts in terms of the timing of his interview this morning, so he'll be back. Even not on his regular day. The first day we're back, Sam's back too.
Nice.
We love Sam. We appreciate him. Everybody has some, takes their off sometimes. It happens.
Yeah. How about coming out and saying it too?
Yeah.
Like just addressing it. I respected that a lot, to come out and just say it, and to say it the way that he had too. And if you haven't seen the post, just go back and say it. I don't want to take up the entire segment and reiterate that. But
I mean, I didn't think he needed to apologize. DB and I talked about this last week, but there was also, speaking of like what I considered unnecessary apologies, did you see the Sammy Sosa thing this week?
I did not catch it, but I'm glad you put it in here, because now I'm glad that I do know more about it, because it's just incredible.
So Sammy Sosa last week, and I wanted to get to this last week. We didn't get to it because, as you know, DB and I almost never get to anything on the rundown.
You guys were on a heater last week. You were on a complete heater. As someone whose regular job is to write the show notes and to try to determine what you guys talked about.
Yeah.
Last week was where I earned my paycheck.
Was a challenge.
Sure. It was tough. A whole lot of Ravi and DB going a rant. Ravi and DB hate this.
All right. So Sammy Sosa apologized for I'm not sure to who, and It was unclear for what exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what he was apologizing to. I'm not sure he knows what he was apologizing about. But he comes out last week and he goes, I made some mistakes during my playing career, and doesn't say the word steroids, doesn't say the word performance enhancers, doesn't say anything at all, really. He's just like, I made some mistakes. And the Cubs are like, you're back. We love you.
It's a blanket statement in case anything else gets brought up. So that way he's like, I already apologized.
Like,
I've made my mistakes.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. First of all, I think the Cubs should apologize for freezing him out in the first place.
Yeah.
Because that's dumb.
Bad look.
Secondly, listen, this might be a hot take.
You're pro steroid.
I am very pro steroid. That is the.
I am.
That is. The take.
I'm right there with you.
I am
right there with you.
Steroids in baseball. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa in the summer of 1998 saved that damn game. That game was dead to rights after the strike. Everybody was mad at baseball. Everybody hated Bud Selig. Nobody gave two single craps about baseball in 1998. And here comes Slam and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire to save the day. So he's apologizing for saving baseball? Is that the problem here? Yes,
I love it.
Incredibly pro steroid in baseball. I think they should get rid of the testing.
Yeah.
Because the steroids are even better now. Get rid of the testing. Let everybody throw 108 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Let the batters juice up to the gills. All right? And I want to see 600-foot home runs.
Yep.
I want to see 70 home run seasons. I want to see guys throwing through the backstop. Give me all the performance enhancers in baseball. Don't you apologize for a damn thing, Sammy Sosa.
Well, again, unless he's apologizing for something else.
Which he could be because he didn't actually
blanket apology.
Because he didn't actually tell us what he was apologizing for.
Covers it all.
Baseball owes you an apology, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds. Not Roger Clemens. He sucks. But for other reasons, not because of the steroids.
Well, and thank God they are bringing him back for the 2025 Cubs convention.
Apparently, that's a big deal. I've been told. I'm not a Cubs fan.
Is that like the spring game? Is that like what people get amped up for in January for baseball?
I think it's more like Comic-Con.
Oh, you get to dress up as your favorite Cub?
I don't know. Think of it like that's how it's been described to me, is like baseball Comic-Con, where it's like this huge convention. It's a very big deal for the people that care about it, and they like go and they do this whole thing. Apparently, it's a very big deal. Also, shout out to Ethan living in Broken Bow, our favorite central Nebraska haunt this morning.
And apologize for the McCook slander, but I can't take it back. It's been said. It's out in the open. I can't do anything about it.
I wasn't slandering McCook. Yeah. I was just saying it was a place that I had visited once.
Also, to the chat, whoever did say, "Oh, the Western Nebraska hate," look, dog, I'm from Sydney. You can't get more Western than me.
That's true.
I'm literally from the armpit panhandle. What do you want?
It's like when me and DB say some things that are like culturally insensitive.
Yeah, you want to talk about it being tough for me.
We get a little bit of leeway because, we look the way we look. Austin gets some leeway because he's from Sydney.
Yep.
When he's talking about Western and Central Nebraska.
That is my privilege, as being
from
Western Nebraska.
You get rural hate privilege because you're from there. So you can make tractor jokes and whatever you want to do.
But it's insensitive if someone says it to me.
Exactly. It's like, how dare you? How dare you? So that's what's happening here. I didn't say it. I said I've been to McCook. I've got some people from McCook that I love dearly.
Oh man.
And I'm sure it's great. I haven't been there in about 20 years at this point.
Yeah.
Since like college. But it's a place.
It is.
It is without a doubt 100% a place.
But Sammy Sosa.
But no, yeah. I would like to see steroids come back in baseball.
Yeah,
I would love it. That's my dream.
Studied exercise science, so I want to be clear about this. There are varying, very different types of steroids.
Oh yeah, steroids is a blanket.
Yes,
like
there are
and
some,
most of them aren't even technically steroids.
Yes, a lot of people consider steroids to be like what the guy with back acne at your gym is doing in the bathroom.
Yeah,
right.
Anabolic steroids.
Yes,
right?
There are different forms of steroids. In professional sports, where their one career goal is to perform at their highest level, and we have the science, we have the ability, and we have team doctors and organizations, I think you can actually
do it.
I make a wholehearted agreement that why shouldn't we allow every single professional athlete to seek for their highest personal peak performance.
Yeah.
And so if it is regulated, if it is approved, and you can prove the science that you don't have long-term effects, every athlete should be allowed to do that in any professional setting. And I even include the Olympics in that too.
So I'm gonna give a caveat there because I don't totally agree.
Okay.
I'm okay with the Olympics. I would have loved to see Usain Bolt run like an 8.4
Yes,
meters.
that's what I'm saying.
Here's no on the combat sports.
Okay, yeah, we don't need to do that. Okay, that's fair. Good point.
I'm gonna pass on football as well because there's a lot of collisions there. So in football and combat sports, I'm gonna pass. In basketball, baseball, Olympics, I'm all for it.
Yep.
Let's get after it. Like I want to see like a shot putter throw that thing into the stands.
Yes, right.
Like let's do it.
I'd like to see they have to mark off a part of the Olympic Stadium for the javelin just so it doesn't go through, a seat or something like that.
100%. Yeah, I'm all on board for that. I will put a caveat on combat sports and football. Yep. Like maybe we don't go there because I don't want to see anybody murdered on live television.
I see exactly what you're saying with combat sports. And I know football. We saw there would be a weekend of some bad injuries. I get it, but football, there are freak injuries that happen all the time, and
I know.
But I completely understand what you're saying, though, and I'm all the way for it, especially in baseball and especially in the Olympics.
Oh, 100%.
Like those are a million percenters, and why we don't allow that to happen, I do not understand.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
it's some like weird moral outrage. It's like I don't care.
Yeah,
guys.
Imagine like baseball. It's like the middle of July, and you get like baseball red zone because everyone's just yanking home runs. That'd be incredible. And now 8 hours of commercial-free baseball.
Yes, I would like steroids back in baseball. That's my take. I would like steroids back in baseball. I would love to see steroids. Can you imagine Michael Phelps just like juiced up?
Oh my gosh.
It'd be incredible.
Yeah.
Give me all of it.
Yeah.
I want every single bit of it.
Give me all of them. All the steroids.
Kent says probably needs to ban it in hockey too. That's probably fair.
Yeah.
There's a lot of violent collisions in hockey, and
I agree with that.
They're literally running around on knives. So let's.
You don't want someone to be a little too upset in that sport.
Yes.
That would be very bad.
So Kent, good call there. Let's get him out of hockey too. But I think strategically,
if there was a 64-team playoff, would you need it then in football?
I'm sorry.
With that many more games?
I'm sorry, what?
Full recovery.
For recovery? I mean, that many games, would you need the steroids?
Shane's been sitting on that. He's been waiting.
No.
Not at all?
Nope, we're good.
Maybe a little bit.
No.
What if you can get all the way to the championship game and then you can use steroids?
No, see, I would like.
You don't like that?
No, I could give. There's.
Come on.
There's some substances that are mostly for healing purposes that are banned that are not really going to give you some of the same performance.
Oh, like what, Ravi?
We don't need to talk about that right now.
No. I'd like to expand on that thought. What do you mean? You just a break saves you. Oh, classic.
I mean, just like BPC 157 if you want to do some.
What are the chances DBs listen to any of this steroid talk and we just ask him right at the front? Just first question. Should they allow steroids back in baseball?
He probably hasn't listened, but we could ask him anyway.
I think we just lead off. I think it's not a bad idea.
We'll talk to DB coming up next. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. Make baseball roided again.
Yes.
That's our platform on the show this morning.
BBRB, baby.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here on the Pillar Exterior stage where we are joined by my normal co-host, good old DB on the Hurrdat hotline. DB, what's up, buddy?
How you guys doing?
Oh, we're trying to keep it on the rails here real quick.
Austin still got all those jokes or what?
No, actually, I'm firing blanks all day today. It's a tough crowd out there in the stream.
I highly doubt that.
All right, DB, I'm going to ask you a question with no context whatsoever, okay?
Okay. Yep.
Would you be pro them removing all restrictions on performance enhancers in baseball?
No.
Why not?
Oh, come on, DB.
Well, primarily because, I just want to say, I always believe it's just my personality. I don't mind pushing the envelope, but I like to operate within a certain framework.
Okay.
Right. So I'm not a big wild west guy, and I also don't want to the victor goes the spoils or to the finances goes the athlete. So I get it at that stage. A lot of guys are capable of doing a lot of different things because they're not limited monetarily, but you still will have more than can haves and not as many haves. So my gut reaction is, no, I don't even want to use that term. Never mind. My initial reaction is no.
All right, that's fair. I did want to also wish you happy Immaculate Reception Day. I don't know if you celebrate.
Yeah, I do. I think of Shane on this day every year.
Don't they still have like the Franco Harris like cutout in the Pittsburgh airport or something where he's like making the catch?
Do. And you know what's weird about that? Franco in my lore, my fandom lore, is just okay.
Yeah, you're not a huge guy. You're not a huge Franco guy, right?
No.
I agree with you on that, Damon.
I'm very. Yes, I figured you'd like that, Liquid. I figured you'd like that.
So, DB, as you get ready to, what time are you flying out today?
Yeah, so I've got screening here. The first group goes at, I think they're 8:30, and I'm 9:40. So it'll work quick. 2 planes are going out. We flip-flopped. Originally, I was on the first plane, but there was a delay, so they want some guys there early because they're going right to the Meadowlands, which is kind of funny because this morning, the players are going to be in like, the bottom half. They're like in their girdles, right, in shells. No, they're kind of grumbling a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Oh, man, whatever. We got to go right to the Meadowlands because they've been in full pads 3 times already in the last, I think, 5 days. So they had yesterday off, and I told a couple of those guys this morning, I'm like, look, man, we flew out on Christmas Eve in the morning. Got to the stadium, they had our weights and stuff already set up at the high school. We went full pads and lifted. So I don't want to hear it. You can wear a neoprene girdle, man. No, it is not that big of a deal. You'll be all right. Trust me.
That's got to be the worst airport travel, is just having to wear full girdle entire time you're there.
Listen, AJ, they're spoiled. They never even step foot in the airport.
These guys haven't sniffed an airport.
Yeah, they don't have to really go through screening. It's a sweet setup. It's kind of this brick garage that's next to the Lincoln Airport, and they funnel guys through with the detectors. They get their food and they go. It's like, life is good, man. I didn't know how to use an airport until I was like 28. I'm like, what are these gate things and terminals? And oh my gosh, who are all these people? Like, I didn't even know what that was. So that'll be fine. That'll be fine. The Giants were pretty cool to let them get in, and this setup is. They're going to be busy, man. It's not look at this like a vacation, that's for sure.
Yeah, we heard Rule say in that press conference that they're going to win. They're not going for the experience, but you have experiences kind of naturally built into the bull process. Rule and his staff have kind of been through this, right? How do you balance all that? Because this is a group of a Nebraska team that hasn't been through these experiences in some time. They probably want to be able to share the bull experience, but you have to then prepare for the game. How do you keep that all balanced, or is it mainly just you focus on the game first and then try to fit everything else in after?
So I think the main thing you worry about with bowls is logistics. So he's very aware. He asked he's always doing his homework, right? He's like the consummate Berean. But it's like, so he asks a lot of questions, and he thought the main thing that he's gotten over the last, handful of days is try to limit the bus travel, because quietly, you're not really doing anything, but you don't want your guys on a bus 3 hours out of the day. You just don't. So, logistically is something I think he's worked very hard at, and it's kind of a cheat code. He's got a lot of guys from the area. And so you can access the Meadowlands, you can get into Fordham, You can set up a walkthrough through Central Park. He knows all the little nooks and crannies, so he's really going to try to maximize the workload, but limit the time that they're moving to and from. Like, I think that's the biggest thing, because the practice times have stayed similar. They're all going to be mid-morning. We've got the early one on Christmas Day. Right now, it says TBD, and you have no idea. I'm hoping it is still to be determined. But right now, it says early morning in parentheses. And I don't know, man. We got to give Santa a chance to get back to the North Pole. I think we can wait on that.
DB, moving away from Nebraska here for a second. I'm curious how you felt about the opening round of the college football playoff. I know we were texting a little bit back and forth, but how, we both were high on Notre Dame. Both of us were skeptical on Tennessee. I know that there were a lot of...
Isn't that amazing? And we wondered how Clemson was going to get stops.
Yeah, and they did not.
But Klubnik did do the thing that I told you I thought he would. He's a ding-dong. He's just naive enough to throw it all over the yard.
Yeah, and he had that super weird, fumble where he was trying... That was... I don't know what he's doing. There's a little bit of Jameis in Cade Klubnik.
Yeah, a little bit.
I kind of like him though.
Yeah. But how much do you like a Clemson play call at the end where they're like, 3rd and goal, down 2 scores, get stuffed. We'll just do the same thing again and see if it works.
I don't know, man. We both predicted that Texas would cover, so I loved it a lot. I like being right.
Fair. Listen,
I'm like, run that thing run that thing into a brick wall. Go ahead, do it again.
Yeah, let's go ahead and check down on 4th down.
Yeah.
What's the problem there?
My buddy in KC, I had given him some plays, and he was one. That day I went. It was like a 3-0 day, and so once Clemson was driving, he's like, if Dabo ruins this thing, I'm going to be. And I was just like, relax. It's probably something. It's not in Dabo's way. And the 4th down happened on the little shallow cross, and the dude got his bell rung. And I just saw my buddy with his money bag signs. I'm like, you dirty dog.
Well, DB, those first round games, I think everyone would pretty much agree the better team won in all the matchups. I don't think anyone would make any argument opposing that. But do you feel like the home playoff atmospheres is something that the College Football Playoff Committee, the NCAA, and everyone that watched those first rounds agreed is something moving forward, and maybe something like Ravi's argued earlier that we need more of? Or do you think it made that big of a difference from those first round matchups?
I love it. I love it. And I think until you get more competitive balance. Now, again, this is the duality in my personality, right? I love being right. I said, listen, in three years, this hasn't been competitive in the semis with 4 teams. How's it going to be competitive with 12, right? And it's even worse. I think the average scoring margin going into this year was like 21-2 in the semis, and just a 4-team playoff. So we'll see what the numbers say, but I'm not going to be one of those guys. I promise you, because I watched almost every minute of every game. I'm not going to be one of those guys that's like, I can't believe. I'm just going to enjoy it, right? I enjoyed watching Indiana get their head beat in, right? I thought Texas and Clemson was super exciting. Like, I don't begrudge being greedy, but they do have some things that they've got to clean up and change a little bit. I just hope, you guys, that the home sites isn't one of them. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I love the home sites. I made the argument.
I like weather being a factor.
Yeah, 100%. I made the argument to Austin that I think they should do home sites for the first 2 rounds and not move to bowls until the semis, but which I think would be a ton of fun because if you got teams with
quick math. So how many bowls would that tie in? 2 or 4?
So you would have 3 because you'd have the semifinals and then the finals,
championship, which I like because
in the middle. My man Jamie would be proud of me. He'd be blowing me up on Twitter right now. God, Jamie, math's up. I'm not good at division
or addition for that matter. Apparently.
Wow.
Hey,
Wow.
leave divisions out of this, all right? Top two teams.
That's fine. That's fine. 12, then 2, then 6.
Carry the 7.
Yeah, whatever, man. Whatever.
But no, I think it'd be a lot of fun to get, because I don't understand of the. I get the appeal of getting a bye, but then you lose the home game. I'd like to see that next round gets a home game as well.
So do you need buys?
No, I mean, if at 12 you do just from the
You
numbers.
probably
but-
want something to
Yeah.
play for, but would it be home field?
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like if you are a top seed, a bye is a big thing, and especially if you're a team
I
like
agree.
Oregon.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah.
if you just look at how your schedule's built, and obviously you have to build these schedules out like years in advance, but Oregon this year, they were probably gasping for a bye because they had to play, it was like 8 or 9 straight weeks in a row. So getting this bye is very beneficial to them. But I see your argument, though, because if you're Ohio State, you probably want to keep it rolling. You'd rather take a home game in the shoe rather than you'd have a bye week and then go to a neutral site.
Yeah, speaking of which, how about so Austin, we were trying to cap Ohio State all week last week, and I'm notoriously been out on Tennessee all year. I just have never thought they're very good. And Ravi and I were talking the last 2 days, and I'm like, God, Ohio State's got to have one of these in them, don't they? Like, where they just like maximize, and sure enough, when I don't know, I don't think Tennessee obviously is very good, but when Ohio State's dialed,
oh yeah,
they have some weapons.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at their level of physicality, right? 'Cause
yeah.
I don't know if you're going to get that from Will Howard on the repeat, but if they can replicate being good in the trenches like that, that's a good run team that they slowed down this weekend. So
Because that's
felt
really
like
been
Notre
their
Dame-
bugaboo, right? Like, is the physicality more than anything, right?
I just don't love. They haven't been good at the line of scrimmage all year, and I like. But the team I was probably the most impressed with was probably Notre Dame.
Yes.
I mean, you know
Their
where I'm at
special
on them.
teams, their special teams is going to be a handful for teams to prepare for. And they're going to have to, be able to make some field goals.
Yeah.
So that may be a thing, but offensively and defensively, if Leonard can play catch, he's got to find somebody else other than Faison, who's pretty good. He's probably their most athletic wide receiver, but that's a interesting team to have to prepare for just because of the way that they're just grimy and they're physical. And over time, you start stacking games. That stuff wears on you.
Mm-hmm.
It can wear on you.
DB, speaking of Notre Dame, they open up as a 1.5-point dog against Georgia with Georgia's backup quarterback. Like, how do you feel about that? Because I saw that and I'm like, these people got to be out of their minds.
Yeah, no, I think the line is right. I truly think that game is a toss-up because this is what happens. You're gonna get this version of Georgia that you're going to get is going to be dialed. And they still have better players top to bottom. Now, listen, both quarterbacks kind of have the same bugaboo. One just has significantly more experience. Leonard hasn't been known as a guy that has been accurate and gets vertical in the passing game, and Georgia is going to have to figure out how they're going to do that too. But I'm just telling you, like, this is a good matchup. And if you like hitting and you like physicality at the line of scrimmage, this one might be the best of the bunch coming up this weekend.
So you said you thought you might have been most impressed with Notre Dame. I thought the 3 most impressive teams were Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State. Which of those 3 do you think can translate what they did the best into the quarterfinals?
Well, clearly the highest ceiling belongs to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Because their margin they have a little more margin for error because they can still big play you. And they have yet to play their best football, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was the best version we saw this past weekend. But Texas is weird because I've said this all year. I think Texas is pretty good. But are they? Right? Like,
yeah.
I think they're pretty good. they don't have any great wins, and they lost twice to the best team they played, so that gives me pause. But that was a pretty good version of the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to get that. Now, it's a little bit of fool's gold because Clemson is civvy, is a little civ-like defensively.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if I had to rank the order, I would go Notre Dame 1, Ohio State 1A. It's close. I have to be careful and stay, like, pretty objective because I don't think Tennessee's good. But I can't let that skew what I saw.
Yeah.
Right? Ohio State still handled business and mauled that team. Funny story, you're always making fun of Micah being your spirit animal. We were watching the pregame, and Nico came out, and he was in a hood and a sweatshirt. And just the day before, he asked me what I thought about guys that warmed up without their shirts on. And I was like, I don't pay much attention to that. I just try to mind my own business pregame. Like, it's whatever. I said, now, conversely, if guys came out in ski parkas and winter coats, I'd think something was wild. And he saw Nico warming up, and the camera panned to him. And he goes, oh, yeah, Ohio State by 20.
I did like Tennessee coming out all Vaselined up, and they sprint to the heated seats as soon as they get done with their band stretches. Perfect.
It was classic. It was just like it's just who he is. But he comes by it honestly.
So speaking of Texas, I feel like we've kind of, at least I have, I've almost totally forgotten that Arizona State's even in this thing.
Oh, I've never forget.
We haven't
never forget
about
Camp Scatabo
at all. Like what chances do you give Arizona State against Texas?
I think there's a couple of live dogs.
Okay.
Arizona State, I think, is better than we think.
Okay. I like Kenny Dillingham. I do. Yeah.
They play with a certain level of toughness that I like. And in a one-game scenario where you can kind of ramp up, maybe they can't replicate it week after week after week.
Sure.
But they won't have to. So I like Scatabo. I think he can obviously keep you honest defensively. Texas showed a little vulnerability on the back end. But I'd say a team who's I'm not going to put them on upset alert, but Penn State's got a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be another good round. I don't know if I said upset alert, or I don't know if I go like upset alert, but there definitely some of these matchups have my eye. It's just weird to see lower seeds favored.
Yeah.
Yeah, DB, I know you just broke down both of those games, the Penn State, Boise State, Texas, Arizona State, but obviously between the two seeds that people probably assuming wouldn't move on would be Arizona State, Boise State. Which of those two running backs need a better day for their team to win?
Certainly Boise State. Arizona State has got some pretty underappreciated wide receivers, and I like Levitt at quarterback because he gives you some escapability, and he can extend drives. Right? We saw the human backbreaker and Pat Mahomes do it again this weekend. Like, he has that tendency on these drives, and I know they blew Iowa State out, but early it was interesting to watch how they couldn't get him to the ground, and he'd scramble for a couple first downs early, and you could just see Iowa State's spirits start to wilt, and then they obviously couldn't tackle the scat man. And so Levitt can present some unique challenges for extending plays. Now he's going to have to make some throws vertically, but Genty is the guy that's got to be the man for Boise because they can possess the football. And what I think you're going to be surprised with, unless you go back and you watch Oregon, Boise has no problems being physical at the point of attack. Mm-hmm. And that is a very, very good tackling football team. They bring drama. Ask Oregon.
DB, just a couple minutes left here with you. I know we're a few days out still, but what's the vibe you're getting on Nebraska and Boston College?
Yeah, so I love it. I think, BC has got kind of that three-headed monster in the backfield, but Robichaux is obviously the guy. You got to find a way to get him to the ground. These Boston College running backs, and there's been a stable of them over the years. They're just physical, downhill, churn and burn kind of guys. So this would always be the case with me in bowl games, especially with layoffs. Tackling is at a premium, which is why I think you've seen Nebraska spend so much time in pads because, Coach Rule has a feel that Coach O'Brien and how he wants to play, and it's with physicality. So Nebraska's got to tackle and defend the run. I mean, that's first and foremost, especially with how BC likes to take their shots off of run action. So Nebraska's got to have good eyes. From a temperament standpoint, I really like it. This team, and this is it's not quite 30,000 feet, but it's not being in the locker room every day either. This team looks to be enjoying themselves right now, right? They're attacking the day. Even yesterday on the down day, to see guys go get massages and get in the pool, and get to the rehab facility. Not rehab facility, like rehab facility, but like
Jeez.
To go work on their bodies and Thea Wright's trainers in town, and so a couple of the DBs went and got some extra work in. I like where this group is at in terms of their emotions. So I like Nebraska, and I have since the matchup. You still got to go out and play ball.
DB, we appreciate it. Have a great trip out to New York. Enjoy your Christmas, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, man, appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the show.
See you, buddy. We will be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're going to talk to Scott Mutryn coming up here in the next segment to preview Boston College. He is their sideline analyst. But before that, we got to get to some NFL.
Yes.
We had
huge weekend.
A busy weekend. And I feel like every weekend that we have in the NFL, I know less and less about who I think is good.
Yep.
Who I think is bad. There's some teams I know are bad, and there's some teams I know are good. But the differentiation between the good teams gets more confusing every week, right?
Yes.
So we sit here and we go, okay, I think last week DB and I were talking about how, Philly might be the best team in the league. And then Jalen Hurts gets a concussion. They lose to the Commanders. And you're like, okay, well, I don't really know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Because Jalen Hurts got a concussion, but he doesn't play defense.
Yeah.
So not really sure what to do.
And they had
the Eagles.
They have a great defense that played well, but still, I don't know how many possessions Washington had, but how do you get 5 turnovers and then still give up 36 points?
It's hard to do.
Very difficult.
It's hard to do.
And you got an interception in the last 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
It should have been wrapped up by then. And you have one of, if not the best rusher in terms of running the football in the National Football League, and you can't close out the game. I understand it's your backup quarterback, all that other stuff, but I mean, we're talking a little differently if Devontae Smith makes one catch at the end of the game.
100%.
But I was going to ask you the same thing the last time I was on here, like a month ago or whatever. 2 different bird teams. The Ravens had such a tremendous win over Pittsburgh on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then the Eagles had just a head-scratching loss. And I feel up on the Ravens right now. I feel good about the Ravens.
I still don't know what to do with the Ravens because I don't trust their defense at all. They've given up a ton of points in games this year.
They've figured out their 2 tight end stuff, though.
Yes.
Likely and Andrews are tough to defend.
Offensively, I feel really good about them. But then I've got the defensive problem. And then I go, okay, is Lamar Jackson going to decide to not suck in the playoffs? Because I have no idea. Because they could be 17-0. And I'd be like, yeah, I still don't know if I trust Lamar.
Yep.
Like, it's the calendar flipped. I don't know if I trust Lamar now. And then you've got the Lions, who I think probably were the best team in football, and they're a mash unit. And most of those guys aren't coming back.
Yep.
They're trying to, do some sort of witchcraft on David Montgomery's knee to pretend like he's not out for the season.
Well, if the Lions just keep playing the Bears, then they'll be undefeated.
I think that's everybody, though.
Right?
If everybody
This is the beginning of the year, everyone was like, we'll just play the Panthers and look good. The Bears have now become the bring your girlfriend to the game because everybody looks good when they play the Bears.
Look, I'm going to get – even the backups are like, I'm going to get minutes today.
Well, speaking of the NFC North, Are the Vikings the best team in the NFC?
So that's the thing is every week I'm like, oh, it's not the Vikings, is it? And then it might be the Vikings.
I was waiting for them to turn rotten sour, like end of October, and they just have not. They just refuse to lose. It's crazy. But you look at
the beginning of the year, they were the best.
Yeah, really?
So I mean, it goes full circle in the NFC North.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, except for the Bears.
At the beginning of the year, they were not the best, Shane. What are you talking about? They were
the
not.
Vikings?
No.
They had the most solid team.
No,
they lost their quarterback before the season started.
They were at best third behind the Lions and the Packers.
Yes. And people were higher. I think many people probably thought the Vikings were last, right, in that division?
Probably not last, but it was. Some people were higher on the Bears.
Yeah, I don't know.
And thought they might come.
People were way too high on the Bears.
Yes,
admittedly, myself.
Shane, you're out of your mind. Like the Lions were the best team in the division by far. Then it was the Packers because people are obsessed with Jordan Love.
Yeah. They are. Yes, they are.
And it's a good team. I mean, they're a well put together team. Matt LaFleur is a great coach. Mm-hmm. But you looked at, okay, you don't know who's going to play quarterback, whether it's J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, and you didn't really love either option, to be honest. Then you lose McCarthy, so you even lose the choice.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's like, oh, yeah, Sam Darnold's going to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And then Sam Darnold comes out and looks like one of the top 8 quarterbacks in the league right now.
Yep.
And like you look at it and you go like, okay, I like their defense, I like their weapons. You have no idea what's going to happen at quarterback. But they were easily the third best team in the league, perception-wise, coming into the season. And I still don't totally trust them.
Yeah.
I'm like, they go out and they win almost every week. And they're 13-2?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at them and I go, I don't know. I don't know if it's the Darnold thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a Vikings thing. Because let's be honest, we've been fooled by the Vikings before. They've had really good regular seasons.
They lost to Daniel Jones in a playoff game.
That's hard to shake.
I'll never forget.
There's some things you can't.
I'll never forget a 4th down check down at home.
There's some things you can't unsee.
Yeah.
But you also, I mean, I go all the way back and I'm sitting there and I go, not to like cause PTSD for any of our Minnesota Vikings fans, but I'm like, I still remember Gary Anderson. They're 15-1. The guy hasn't missed a field goal all
99.
year. And I'm just like, I think 98.
98?
I think it was 98.
Oh, yeah. It was the Falcons Broncos Super Bowl, right?
Yep. And I'm just sitting there. I
was 2. So
you don't remember? Come on. And I'm just sitting there, I go like, it's the kind of the same way I feel about Lamar, right? It's like, it's the Vikings. I don't really know.
I think it's fair to say in the AFC, if you are blank NFL team and you're pushing to the playoffs, you're in the playoffs, whatever the case is. If you're an AFC team, you are most fearful of the top teams. But in the NFC, I think it's fair to say in the NFC, you might be more terrified of the teams coming up. And I wouldn't include Washington in that, but the Rams, I think the Rams could go on a run.
I do think people are scared of the Rams, and rightfully so.
And I hate to say it, I know they just lost last night, but I don't know how the Bucs keep losing games, especially the Cowboys. Like I know what happens is that they just go full NFC South and they forget how to football sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what happened last night. But there are just the Bucs in a playoff game, Baker Mayfield when he's locked and loaded, I don't want to face them at all. I'd much rather play the Lions than the Bucs. Personally, like if in a wild card game, if I'm playing the Lions against a defense, like the Lions know they have to outscore everybody.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get 35 put on them.
But they can. I mean,
they can.
Yeah.
I would rather be in that shootout of a game than have to face a Bucs or a Rams team that feels like they have nothing to lose and they're just going to throw everything at the wall at you.
I won't go Bucs. You could make an argument to me that I'd rather see the Lions than the Rams.
Yeah.
Because I do think the Rams are really good and really scary, and they've got championship pedigree with Stafford and with McVay, and that's a team that the opposite of Detroit is finally healthy and getting healthier. Los Angeles should scare a lot of people. The Rams should scare almost everyone. You know what's funny, though? The Rams still have the same point differential as the 49ers right now.
Oh, that's insane.
Minus 18.
How are you feeling? You got eliminated before your game even started.
No, I knew. I mean, listen, I said before the season this was a regression year for the 49ers. They had the injuries before the season started. I was like, I just don't think anybody's going to be healthy. I don't trust what they're telling me about Christian McCaffrey and his mystery double Achilles strain, which I don't even know how that happens. I didn't trust any of it. I didn't trust the Trent Williams holdout and all that kind of stuff, and he comes back out of shape. I didn't trust any of it for a second. the season has gone almost exactly how I imagined. Maybe a few more injuries, but in terms of wins, losses, it's been almost exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
So, I still don't like watching them lose, right? Like, you sit there and on Sunday and you're like, this still sucks. But it's gone, as a season as a whole, it's gone almost exactly how I expected. The teams that would scare me if I'm the NFC, I don't want to play the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to play the Commanders because Daniels can just go off on you.
Yeah.
And I probably –
The Commanders are going to be on the road, though.
So here's I don't
know.
Here's the other thing is, in a one-game sample size, I still don't really want to play Detroit. I don't think Detroit's healthy enough to win the Super Bowl, but they are good enough that they can put up like 45 on you and just beat your head in, right?
And Dan Campbell's crazy enough that you're like, listen, anything can happen in this game.
Because you don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, we have to plan for everything. At one point, they might put 8 defensive linemen in, and we're just going to have to roll with it.
Yeah, we're just going to do the NFL blitz, like all-out blitz. You have 9 guys. I don't know. Like, Dan Campbell's a wild card, and their offense is good enough that, that's really scary in that sense. To your point on the Bucs, I think the Bucs are also a one-game sample size team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the Bucs can win the Super Bowl. I think the Rams could win the Super Bowl.
I agree with you. I don't think the Bucs could win the Super Bowl. I think they
but
could
in one game, scary.
Yes, I think they could beat a team. And I mean,
and to point differential,
who can stop Mike Evans on a good day, right?
Yeah. And it depends on which version of Baker you get and which version. But they're the only team in the NFC South with a positive point differential. They're like, and guess who's the closest after them? The Saints.
Oh, jeez. That hurts. Full NFC South, man.
The Falcons are third. They're minus 22. They're worse than both the 49ers, the Rams, and the Saints. It's a weird division. In the AFC, though, it's basically this. I'm scared of the Chiefs because of the Chiefs.
Yep.
I'm scared of the Bills. That's about it.
Yep.
I'm scared of the Ravens, maybe in a one-game sample size. Yep. I'm scared of the Steelers, maybe in a one-game sample size. That's about it. I'm not scared of really anybody
It's the top
else.
2, and it's everyone else in the AFC.
Coming up next, we will preview Boston College here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. We're live here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Scott Mutryn. He's the sideline analyst for Boston College. Scott, how are you this morning?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
We're doing well. We appreciate you joining us, getting a little preview of Boston College when they got Nebraska here in just a few days. But I kind of want to start a little big picture with you with Boston College and Bill O'Brien. In the short time he's been there so far, how has the Bill O'Brien experience been in Boston College, early returns?
Well, to get a coach of Bill O'Brien's caliber when you have your head coach leave in January or February is not very common.
Sure.
And to basically get an upgrade, to get someone with the resume of Bill O'Brien at that time when most jobs are kind of figured out, BC was very lucky in that sense. And I think BC caught Coach O'Brien in that right time of life and an opportunity to coach in a place that's close to home. His wife graduated from BC. Just an opportunity where he's done a lot, but he has an opportunity to build a program in his image from top to bottom. And I think BC's fortunate in that sense. Considering what could have been, I think you have to really count your lucky stars that they have Bill O'Brien.
When looking at just Boston College from the Nebraska perspective, looking at the season as it went, it felt, or at least it looks like, kind of a roller coaster where you get one of those first few upsets over Florida State when everyone was piling on the Seminoles, and then you come back, play a couple of close games, get some key wins, and even a top 25 win by the end of the year. Is that how the season felt, or was it a little bit more streamlined than what we see just kind of on the box scores at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think you can say it was a little bit up and down. The BC played a lot of close games earlier in the year, and they beat Western Kentucky and Michigan State in close games. But they had a lot of games where they just didn't play 4 quarters. And you'll see the losses against Virginia Tech, even to an extent Missouri, where they're in those games and they come down to last possessions and they just don't get it done, but they have just a lull at some point in the game, whether in the first half or the second half. And Bill O'Brien talked about they just need to learn how to win. sometimes it's you're talented and you can be there, but you just got to learn how to win. And I think that's the thing he struggled, getting that across. And I think you see some of that as it was at the most important position, which there was a change as the year went on. But there were just some things that just weren't good enough to get them over the top. And whether it was offensively, defensively, special teams, it was a kind of a roller coaster ride. BC, I think, has 3 field goals on the year, and 2 of them were in the second to last game of the year, so they haven't been proficient kicking the football. So I think one of those facets always played a role in them kind of coming up short. But they were in every single football game, which is, if you look at that, there were no games that you just walked out and then you're like, wow, they were overmatched in that game. So I think that's something that really kind of the season for them is missed some opportunities and really needed to learn how to win. And then as the year progressed, they kind of settled in as to who they are and what they wanted to be offensively and defensively.
Scott, you mentioned the change at that key position of quarterback. Obviously, Thomas Castellanos had, the big start to the season. What exactly happened there where the change was made? Obviously, ironically enough, Castellanos ends up at Florida State after that change was made. But what were kind of some of the inner workings of how that switch happened?
I mean, it's not like I was in the room,
sure,
but you can sense the body language of the offensive unit. There was some frustrations there with just how the offense was being run. I think a lot of the receivers wanted a couple more touches. They just felt a little disconnected. There wasn't a lot of rhythm to the passing game. And you could see that the body language of the offense at times would just be very lethargic. They would go through spurts where they just looked very disjointed. And I think Bill O'Brien felt that a change needed to be made. And it was ironic that when Grayson James comes in, you just kind of saw them pick it up a little bit. And even when you get to SMU, like that game, BC's got down 3 points with the ball in their hands with 2 minutes left in the game to go down and, tie or potentially win that game. And that offense just started to just be more dynamic in the passing game. They were able to get their tight ends involved a little bit more in the middle of the field. The wide receivers started to get some more touches. BC does a really good job of throwing to their running backs in the passing game. And once those things came together, and BC didn't have to rely on their running game, because if you look at the stats, I think BC's in the top 1 or 2 in the country in percentage plays of running the football. When they were able to start throwing the ball into different parts of the field, it really freed up their offense to, I think, really execute on a level in which Bill O'Brien envisioned it looking like.
Scott, Ravi and I were talking before we got on the air with you about, the Matt Ryan Eagles or the Luke Kuechly Golden Eagles and all of those, bigger names that have come through the program that Nebraska fans likely recognize from their NFL careers. Is there a guy on this roster right now that's getting a lot of love or a lot of looks that maybe can project to the next level that could have a big showcase in New York City?
Yeah, I think, 2 of them, I don't know if he's going to play, but Donovan Ezaraku, who is first or second in the country in sacks. He also led BC in tackles from the defensive end position. Just an outstanding motor, outstanding year this year. He had a tough junior year, had high expectations and didn't really perform, but very tough around the edge, very pliable, ability to change, launch angles for himself and really, really create some havoc throwing the football for teams that want to throw the football. He had just an outstanding year. He's not one of those guys that comes off the bus and he's like 6'5", 290. He's about 6'2", 240, but his motor and his just speed and strength really set him apart this year. He was outstanding. But I don't know if he's going to play. We have to see on that. But then there's a couple linemen, Ozzie Trapillo, right tackle, and Drew Kendall, center. Both come from great BC kind of, offensive linemen. Great lineage. Both their fathers played in the NFL. Those 2 guys are going to make, it's not a sexy thing, but those 2 guys are, if they stay healthy, we're going to get paid a lot of money to play football in the NFL.
Well, Scott, and you mentioned that run game earlier. I know the name that jumps off the page for a lot of people is Kai Robichaux, but it's kind of a good group in general, isn't it?
Yeah, they really kind of do they'll ride the hot hand. You talk about they've had probably 4 to 5 running backs that have had significant carries this year. Robichaux's kind of the headliner, but Trayshawn Ward's very good running the football, but also very valuable in the passing game. Turbo Richard was having a good season. Then he had a little, I think, bit of a hamstring injury that caused him to miss some time. Then they bring in McDonald, who has been outstanding the last 4 or 5 games of the year to run the football. So you have a bunch of different guys, and the BC offense just really does a good job of identifying, like, who's got it today, and then they just ride that horse. And then the ability for the quarterback to run the football helps too. Grayson James isn't as dynamic as Thomas was, but he can still use his legs and create some plays running the football.
So at the Fenway Bowl last year, this year you get to go to New York City. What's the advantage for Boston College being able to be a little bit closer than Nebraska, just traveling to NYC and having kind of that ability to be a little bit closer to home and not have to do the longer, lengthier travel, especially over the holiday?
Yeah. It's a really good point. And one of the things that probably isn't known from people kind of outside the Northeast is that BC has a very, very strong alumni connection in New York City. There are a ton of people that live in the New York metro area that are going to be going to this game. Last time BC played in this was against Iowa. I still think I'm frozen from that game. It was the coldest game I've ever been associated with. So hopefully the field won't be frozen over and playing. We're wearing basketball sneakers by the end of it because there's just the ground was frozen. It doesn't look like the weather's going to be that cold this time around. But BC does outside. People think Fenway was a nice option because of the strong alumni connections there. But New York's going to provide a lot of fans and alums that are there, bringing their families to the game. It's an easy commute. It's on the weekend. It's one of those things that I think is going to help BC to have some friendly faces in the crowd. New York, to have those two big, U.S. cities where you got a lot of alum to pull from is just great. So they're going to have that support there. And I think with the weather not going to be too disastrous, you should have a good turnout.
Scott, we'll get you out of here on this. If this game goes BC's way, what are a couple early indicators you're going to look for to say, yeah, this is how Bill O'Brien wants this thing to go?
It's the line of scrimmage on both sides. BC, has done a good job defending the run as of late. If they're able to defend the run and use their, the coverages and schemes that Tim Lewis has designed, they've done a good job creating some turnovers off that. But it all starts with stopping the running game and then establishing the running game as well. That's going to be the key, and that's going to be a huge challenge. I think Nebraska is going to probably want to do this. This is do the same thing. You're going to see a matchup of teams that have some big, tough guys up front, right, that they're molded in that shape, and they're going to want to win the line of scrimmage to set the tone. And I think that's going to be the challenge for both teams, to see who can do that the best and be able to dictate terms offensively and defensively. That's going to be the key to the game to me.
That's Scott Mutryn. He's the sideline analyst for Boston College. Scott, we appreciate the time and hope you enjoy the game. Thanks
a lot, guys. You too. Have a great Christmas.
Appreciate it. You too. That's Scott Mutryn from Boston College. Good stuff there. Appreciate his time.
That's good stuff.
It's going to be interesting. I actually think Nebraska and Boston College kind of want to play this thing pretty similarly. Mm-hmm. Like I think Bill O'Brien and Matt Rule philosophically are kind of the same mind. So that'll be interesting to see. When both teams want to play the same way, it's kind of just who's better at it. Right. It's not really a contrasting styles deal or anything like that.
I don't know how to feel about this because if you were to say if it's a low scoring or high scoring affair, who do you think wins? I don't know, because it feels like this is as much of a push as you might be able to get when it comes to these tier bowl games between the two teams.
Yeah, I would agree. Coming up next, we're going to talk some national college football, some college football playoff with Ben Kercheval from CBS Sports. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's Austin. I'm Ravi. We are joined now by Ben Kercheval. He is the editor for college football for CBS Sports. Ben, how are you this morning?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
We are doing great. We really appreciate you joining us this morning. Let's hop right into it. Through round 1 of the first ever expanded college football playoff, how do we feel?
I
know a little bit of a loaded question, but
I feel fine because I feel fine about it. I know that Friday and Saturday wasn't all that fun if you're looking for competitive games. I don't know that it was all that surprising. In any given year, there are probably 3-ish teams in the entire FBS who can realistically win a national title because they're good enough and they're healthy enough. This year, I actually think we have more of a handful. We might have more like 5 or 6. But to borrow a line from the great Gary Parrish over at CBSSports.com, covers college hoops for us. You know, the funny thing about a 12-team playoff, guys, it needs 12 teams. And when you need 12 teams and more than half don't really have what it takes to win a national title, and you're going to see what you saw over the weekend. Now, I think some of the criticisms are warranted. How we seed this thing, how we treat buys to the quarterfinals probably needs to be re-examined. That automatic buy for conference championships probably needs to go away. But you're not going to find me telling you that Indiana or SMU or Clemson or Tennessee didn't deserve to be in there more or like less than Alabama or Ole Miss or South Carolina or any other team that felt like they might have been jobbed. Because the reality is all of those teams had warts. And when you start playing hypothetical situations after the fact, it's impossible to argue against because it never happened. The only thing you can do with the limited information that you have, we don't have like college hoops. We don't have 40 games to go off of. This isn't the NBA or the NFL where you have this whole season. You have a finite view of these teams over 12, 13 weeks. And especially with how these conferences has grown, the doing away of divisions, there's just no two paths are the same. In fact, there's so many different paths to get to this 12-team playoff. So you have to make the best decision that you think. And I don't ever really like the committee's approach to it in terms of unveiling it every single week, but I also don't envy their process. And at the end, you got to make your decision. I'm fine with the teams that they came up with. I kind of figured that these first-round blowouts would be a thing. I think what you want to try to prevent in the future are second-round semifinal blowouts, just in terms of the way of how you seed it. But this also isn't a new thing. I mean, the 14 playoff had blowouts every semifinal. BCS national championships weren't always close. That's kind of been the name of the game for a while.
Ben, is there a chance that we're kind of looking at this wrong in the sense of, like, I look at one of everybody's favorite sporting events in the world, March Madness, right? And you look at that and you go, okay, any given year, there's maybe a handful of the 68 teams that can actually win a national championship, right? Like most of those teams know that they're not, like you might be able to make a Final Four if you get the matchups right.
It's about the run.
Right.
It's about the run.
And so I think is there, and maybe we don't have enough teams in college football for it to be about that, but let's say Arizona State makes a semifinal, or, you know, let's say SMU had made a run to a semifinal. Like, is there a way we can view success in college football a little more the way we do in college basketball and have, like, I think that perception change could maybe make this playoff either more or less successful, if that makes sense.
I tweeted that over the weekend and I was immediately berated. So my answer is, I'm going to say the answer to that is no. I think college football fans are hardwired differently. And it is a little bit of an apples and oranges thing. I mean, you're talking about a St. Peter's.
Yeah.
Right, making even just winning a couple of games, right? Like that's the most success that program has ever had and probably will ever have. In college football, the love and the room for Cinderellas to even win one game, like let's just say Indiana had beaten Notre Dame. The love and room for that it's just not there. I think the instant question would be, okay, well, you know, can Indiana beat Georgia? Oh, probably not. You know, so we're just so quick to discard it. And I think part of this nationalization of the sport, when this has been such a regional sport for so long, and just the combining of these conferences and everyone trying to shoot for the same thing, when in a given year, you know, 125 of the 134 FBS teams are playing for something other than a national championship in terms of maybe what their goal is. I think we think about it differently. We're wired differently. We don't appreciate Cinderellas as much. And when you try to step back and take a look at it from 30,000 feet, SMU almost won the ACC in their first year.
Yeah.
I mean, they had, and I know they had an easy schedule. I get it. But they had a real chance to do something special. And Indiana, the most losses of all time of any FBS program, Curt Cignetti comes in, and because of the transfer portal, is able to make an immediate impact at that place. And we don't always take a step back and look at it from that lens. We just look at it from the lens of, well, Alabama and Ole Miss should have been in the playoff instead of them. And I think that just sucks so much joy out of what these teams are able to do. And that's the part that I kind of have a problem with, because if you start talking about the playoff, 11 teams are going to be disappointed and one team's going to be happy at the end of the year.
Ben, obviously first round games all being on those home site fields. We moved to neutral site. Ravi and I have been discussing it throughout the morning about whether or not it would be more impactful to have more of those home site games into the second round, and then the semifinals and national championship would be the only neutral site games. Did you think that the home field played a factor in the blowouts in the first round? And do you think that this sample size from this year could relate to maybe a conversation having just neutral site games throughout, or maybe more home site games for future college football playoff formats?
Yeah, ask Kevin Jennings if playing in Happy Valley made a difference. And I don't mean to joke about that. Kevin Jennings had the worst day of his life on national television. I actually feel bad for him. I mean, that was as bad as I've seen him play, and he had a pretty bad game against Duke early in the year. But the redeeming part about that first round is seeing Penn State Stadium really have that impact, seeing the excitement in South Bend, even taking it from a different angle. How about Tennessee's fans going up to Columbus and having a presence at Ohio State? I know that game didn't play out for them how they were hoping, but just the ability to travel, and it felt more like a non-conference game. I loved it. If you were to ask me personally, I think we should make the playoff largely separate from the bowls. Let them be largely on campus. If you want to do the semis and the national championship at bowl sites, maybe make the Rose Bowl the national championship or something like that. If
We're right
they'll
there
ever
with you.
agree to it, if they'll ever agree to it, hey, look, I would love to let that be its own thing. But I don't know, with the influence that the Bulls have and with their just hard-headedness in terms of being involved in this, I don't know that you're ever going to see something like that. But it's a strange thing to go from on-campus sites to bowl games. It's like, well, how do you measure? Like, did you win a bowl game? Did you not win a bowl? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a little awkward.
You want a playoff game, but not a bowl game.
Yeah.
It's like,
but not a bowl game. Yeah.
Well, Ben, when it comes to that, then you said it yourself, like having that home site advantage, the pageantry of the game in that first round, that looked great, and the optics were phenomenal. And in the national perspective, I think everyone agrees, like it felt great to have home games there. But to bring that competitive balance back, do you think that they might try, and I guess they being the NCAA, the College Football Playoff Committee, whatever that course may be, might try to find an argument to say, hey, we're trying to bring these games to a more competitive playing field, so we're going to go neutral site all the way throughout?
If you want to make it more competitive, redo how you seed.
Yeah, fix the seating. Yeah.
Redo the seating. The home sites was one of the best parts, if not the best part, of the opening weekend. And I know most of these games are blow up, but also even in Austin, Clemson made a run back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they were completely overwhelmed by the moment. They were able to claw their way back in. And so I think you can leave that part alone. Just figure out the seeding. Maybe a conference championship gets you in, but it doesn't get you the 3 seed like it got for Boise State, who is a double-digit underdog to Penn State, even though they're the higher seed.
It does feel like that will be the NCAA's case, though, is that everyone's screaming and clamoring for just reseed, do seeding differently, and they'll be like, what if we just make everything neutral site? That's our solution. That was the problem, and that they're just going to find a different buyout. That would be, I think, the powers that be. It wouldn't be the NCAA on that.
Right. It'd be the powers that be on that. But I don't know, man. They're sticking their hand in this cookie jar way too much anyway. So
True.
I have very little faith that whatever is done will be for the overall health of the sport.
Speaking of that, Ben, I'm sitting here listening to kind of the reasoning you're giving for why the playoff maybe isn't viewed a certain way, and I tend to agree with you. But can I make the argument, between the bowl system and the way fans are hardwired, that the tradition of college football is sort of preventing it from becoming the best version of our current state of football? I mean, I know a lot of people would go all the way back if they could and get rid of the transfer portal and NIL and all that kind of stuff. But obviously none of that's going away. In that state, could I make the argument that the clinging to tradition is actually hindering college football from becoming the best version of itself?
You could make that argument, and I think there are some valid branches of that tree. I think what's happened, I would only respond, and this is you want to talk about 30,000 feet, this is 50,000
Yeah,
feet.
right.
The big thing that college athletics as a whole is struggling with right now is that it was doing things a certain way for about 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pendulum has swung in the completely opposite direction. And I don't mean that as just a strictly bad thing. If you want to talk about NIL just as for instance, no other corner of the American economy had an unpaid labor force. Like you can't, just because you had done it a certain way doesn't mean it was the right, or in this case, even the legal way to do it. So what I kind of tell people who, I'll get questions like, what do we do about this? I'm losing faith in the system. I always think, give it time. Give it 5 years, maybe 7, maybe more, but give it a few years for the system to adjust. On an NIL and scholarship basis and all of how you construct your team, you will probably see the doing away of scholarships in favor of contracts, and that might help keep the movement, the player personnel movement, from getting as wild as it is. As far as the postseason goes, well, that might be a lost cause. We're talking about all the flaws of the 12-team playoff. Those idiots are trying to expand to 14. So. That might be a lost cause, but can we find a way to make some of these bowl games continue to matter? I think you just got to give time for the system to adjust, figure out a way forward in this new world, and tradition is probably largely lost, but I think that's what happens when you're driven by money. And let me tell you something, those two big conferences, they're driven by it the most. And the executives, the television executives, who want to give you these games, they're not thinking about you in Nebraska. They're thinking about the casual fan who wants to watch Ohio State and Oregon, during the regular season as a conference game. And that part does kind of suck. But that's the world that we're living in. Post, late stage capitalism, baby. You gotta love it. And it's infiltrated the sport. And but I don't buy that people will stop watching. I think people will continue to watch, and you just got to find the best way through that how.
We're talking with Ben Kercheval of CBS Sports. All right, Ben, we'll kind of come down a little bit from the 50,000-foot view and talk about some of the actual football that we saw over the weekend. Out of that first round of playoff games, who were you most impressed by in their matchup?
Has to be Ohio State, right? I mean, that was, of all the teams getting their teeth kicked in, that was the most one-sided. And it's not just that they had a great game plan. I thought Chip Kelly had an outstanding offensive game plan. Will Howard looked really good. How about the emergence of Jeremiah Smith? I mean, we've known that he's an incredible talent throughout this entire year. He's shown it from week one. But as they try to make this playoff run, does he just emerge? Does he just have this ascension to really being that X factor, that difference maker? Because if you go back to that Oregon-Ohio State game back in the middle of the year, Evan Stewart for the Ducks was the difference maker in that game, right? I mean, he was the guy that Ohio State's defense just couldn't cover. This time around, when it's so hard to beat the same great team twice, is Jeremiah Smith that guy that ends up being the X factor for them? He's a young player. You know, sometimes you're not going to get the same result week to week when you have such a young player playing an important position. But I'm interested to watch his performance throughout this playoff, I think he really could be the guy for them.
Ben, when you're looking at games for the next round of teams that could make a bid to the national championship, obviously you'd have to win and get 2 more after that. Are you looking for teams that got off with a hot start in that first round, or is it the teams that earn the bye that you think maybe have a better advantage in getting through all the way to the title?
That's a good question, and it's hard to answer because this is the first time we're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. We're not really sure how that bye week is necessarily going to affect teams. And again, the seeding, matters in this. I mean, Texas and Penn State are both big favorites, despite being a lower seed. Injuries, I think, play a role in that, but also now you got one under your belt. There's not that extra little layoff. You've played a game, you're sort of back in, you're hyper focused. I wonder if that ends up playing a role in it as well. You're going from on-campus sites where it's like 0 degrees outside. Suddenly you're in the fast track of an indoor stadium in Phoenix, Arizona. If you're Penn State, a lot of different factors at play here. It's really hard to kind of pin down what's going to make a difference.
Ben, what do you do with a Georgia team without their starting quarterback that's playing against a Notre Dame team that I would argue has played as well as anybody over the large course of the season? Well, and then Georgia is the slight favorite heading into this matchup. What do you do with Georgia at this point?
Great question. It's going to come down to really how Gunnar Stockton plays. And now that Notre Dame has some time to have some tape on him, to prepare for him, certainly not having Carson Beck is a big deal. That offense has really been hit or miss for a large part of this season. Carson Beck had his moments, but he also had stretches where he really wasn't playing well. I think in part because they didn't have Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, 2 guys who are playing on Sundays. It helps when you have that. Also, Georgia's defense hasn't been a world beater this year. Still obviously very good, but not maybe to the level that we've seen in previous years. Notre Dame, that NIU loss, especially if the Irish make a run, that NIU loss is going to be the most confounding game result of the year. I really don't like to be the guy that's like, well, they didn't even want to be there. They didn't even really care. But I really don't think Notre Dame.
How else do you explain
really
it? I mean,
it's just, I really don't. If you play that game 9 more times, I don't even think it's a contest. But you know what? That's also good for them. That seems like that kind of snapped them into place.
Yeah,
didn't it? And that sometimes you need that. And they played really well defensively. I think that's just going to be a lower scoring game. Both teams are really comfortable playing in that style. And if one gets up on a lead, I think they're really comfortable just sort of sitting on it and not really feeling like they have to really blow it away. I'm with you. Notre Dame has been, when they played Indiana, everyone talked about how Indiana's been just blowing the doors off of teams this whole year. Notre Dame had quietly been doing the same thing too.
Yeah.
And that final score in South Bend was not indicative of how well Notre Dame played compared to Indiana. I'm riding with the hot hand here. I think Notre Dame gets it done, but I do think it's low scoring and close. A much better game in that Sugar Bowl quarterfinal.
Ben, between Penn State and Texas, they are big favorites. They are supposed to be the ones to win. They got that first-round victory and moved on. Which team is in a better spot for a letdown performance where maybe they don't get upset, but they don't play up to their potential against the 2 teams in which a lot of people have already written off?
I'm going to borrow a line from Chip Patterson over here at CBS Sports, which tells you I'm coming in with like 0 original thoughts here. I'm borrowing lines from everyone else. But it was so good, I feel like I have to use it. There is still plenty of time, fellas, for James Franklin to step on the rake.
Pull the football out.
I mean, when that game against SMU, when he went for it on 4th down at his own 20, fellas, I don't know what brainworm he has, but he needs to get it removed. That was the worst call, and he was bailed out by Kevin Jennings seeing ghosts. And so that was, I think, first of all, I think both of those teams are going to win, and I think they're probably going to win comfortably. And Penn State does have an easier path to the semifinals. So there's really a spot here where Franklin can finally kind of get that monkey off of his back. I think 2 playoff wins, even against SMU and Boise State, would be really good. But I have that thing in the back of my head where I'm like, do I really trust James Franklin in those types of spots? If they can stop Ashton Jeanty, I think they probably cruise. But I don't think Boise State will hurt itself in the way that SMU did.
Yeah, alternatively, it would be the funniest scenario to have Penn State and everyone say, you have the easiest path to the title game, and then they somehow stub their toe against Boise State.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, can I make the argument that even beating Boise State doesn't really do that much for James Franklin, because like these are the teams he typically beats, right?
Yes.
He beats the pretty good teams, but would be the next game against either a Notre Dame or Georgia, where you'd look at it and be like, oh, those are the games he always loses. Like they almost have to make it to the championship for him to get the monkey off his back, right?
I would counter and say that I wouldn't take away any of his wins, but I would say that he's 1 loss away from everyone just getting back on his ass.
Yeah. Yep.
What about Ryan Day? How much are people on his ass if they don't play well or as well as they did in the first round?
Oh, they'll like flies on you know what, baby. I mean,
we're gonna start hearing a lot more about Mike Vrabel again.
Yeah, I mean that is I think the most impossible job in college football. And I get it. I get what the goals are. The goals are to beat Michigan, to win the Big Ten, and then to compete and then win national championships. And when you dropped as many to Michigan in a row as you have, especially this Michigan team this past year, I totally get the criticism. But if you look at the entire body of work, Ryan Day should be considered one of the best coaches in college football, but because he hasn't done exactly what Ohio State fans have wanted, and again, I understand the criticism, and to a degree, I think it's warranted. He's kind of like Franklin. He's sort of 1 loss away from everyone just hounding on him. I'm a little surprised he hasn't said, screw this. I'm going to go, the NFL or, something where it's just the optics are a little bit different in terms of how you view success or in terms of, what is expected of you. That has to how he still has a baby face. How has that not aged him terribly over the years coaching that program? I would have been like, I can't do this. They shaved years off of my life being the coach of the Buckeyes.
There's certainly more enjoyable jobs he could have in college football. But Ben, we appreciate all the time. We hope you have a great holiday, and we hope you enjoy the quarterfinals of the college football playoff.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Merry Christmas. That's
Ben Kercheval of CBS Sports. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, Kercheval, and Lincoln. That's Austin. I'm Ravi here on the Pillar Exterior stage, reminding you that you don't have to wait until New Year's to get a jump start on some of your resolutions, especially if one of them is weight loss. You can call Midland's Family Urgent Care today, 402-810-9494. They have specials on tirzepatide, $5.99 for the first 3 months, or semaglutide, $3.49 for the first 3 months. Both are FDA-approved medications and are effective, safe, and affordable to help you lose weight. It's Midland's Family Urgent Care. Sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat here. 402-810-9494. Make sure you give them a call today to take advantage of those specials. Excuse me. You ever get one of those?
Just get emotional?
Yeah, I get
thinking about Christmas and candy canes, peppermint, all that stuff.
Yeah, you ever have one of those?
Yes,
where you're just like, oh man.
It comes at the worst times too.
Yeah, I was like, we're just about to get back on the air. I didn't eat anything. I didn't drink anything.
Didn't do anything different.
Yeah, it was just, you decided you can't breathe anymore, Ravi.
You just remembered the ending of Polar Express, and you just got a little emotional about
Not a big
It's physical.
Polar
It's hard. It's
Express
cold.
guy.
See? Just like my rule.
Not a big Polar Express guy.
No, it's haunting.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. When you watch it as an adult, you're like, oh,
The
I don't know about this.
faces are horrifying.
But the hot chocolate song does slap.
I do love hot chocolate in general. It's the only hot beverage I enjoy. I don't like coffee.
The only hot beverage you enjoy?
I don't like hot coffee. I don't like hot tea. I like hot cocoa. That's it. That's the only one. Otherwise,
Really?
I'm very cold. I'm a cold beverage guy.
Huh.
I don't like hot beverages at all.
Do you like soup?
I do like soup.
That's basically a hot beverage.
No, that's food.
But it's soup. What do you mean? Come on. What's your
Hot
go-to
take.
soup? What's your go-to soup here?
Well, it depends.
Okay.
I do like an egg drop soup if I'm going like Chinese food.
Okay, that's mostly soup. That's not a lot of
Love an egg drop soup.
content.
I really love a good New England clam chowder.
Okay, that's more content than soup. I'll give you that.
There's
I'll
some
give you that one.
substance
Yeah.
to it. I know some people don't consider this soup, but I like a chili. I like
How
a
do you
good
like
chili.
your chili, though?
What do you mean? No beans.
Okay.
Because I'm not.
I was thinking more consistency-wise.
Oh, I like a pretty thick chili.
I like a thick chili,
Yeah,
too.
I like
I
a
don't
pretty
want it
thick
to.
chili.
I didn't ask for tomato soup. I asked for chili.
Yeah. I don't love tomato soup, although I will.
Why don't you like beans in your chili? I've never understood. I don't understand people. It's literally called a chili bean. You put it in the chili.
I mean, people from Texas would argue that chili is strictly no beans. That it is not chili if you
People
put
from
beans
Texas
in.
are wrong.
I mean,
fair.
they're usually right about their chili, but I just don't like. I like the meat. Give me the meat and the flavor and whatever.
Texas is a powerful player.
I will say, if I want tomato soup, I probably won't eat the soup, but I will take a grilled cheese sandwich and dip it in the tomato soup. You ever done that?
Yes. Yep.
Incredible.
Mhm.
I'm not going to eat the rest of the soup,
Yeah.
but
right.
I will use it as a dip, like an au jus for a French dip, kind of.
Okay.
You know?
Getting French on it.
Yeah,
I like
au
it.
jus.
What about? Are you what was I thinking of here? I lost it. Come back to me. Oh,
Soup?
cheesy. Are you a cheesy potato guy?
Cheesy potato soup?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I don't like potato soup.
You don't like potato soup?
No.
So you've never been poor?
Not potato soup poor.
Hear the words.
I really like a cream of chicken and wild rice soup.
That's
Very
underrated.
Good soup. Very good
It
soup.
just
Much
doesn't-
better than chicken noodle.
Yes.
Cream
yes.
chicken and wild rice is elite soup.
When we would do chicken noodle, we would do mashed potatoes. You just make like a little bowl out of that inside of your bowl, and then you put the potato or you put the soup over top. Very good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You be you.
You're using the chicken noodle as a gravy, basically.
Pretty much, yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
fine. I can
Yeah,
understand
right.
that. This is Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Make sure you get to the casinos in Lincoln or in Omaha and check out all their promotions and house rules at warhorsecasino.com.
Do you think they have soup at Warhorse?
I don't know.
That'd be crazy.
I don't know if they've
Could you
got soup at
imagine?
Warhorse.
You're going.
It's coming back.
You're
The
just putting
tickle in
in,
the throat's
you're
coming
putting
back
in
again.
futures, and you're just holding an egg drop soup in one hand. I could handle that.
I've actually got some egg drop soup in the fridge. I might have when I get home.
You ever think about the things that you ate as like a kid that you loved and like? I couldn't possibly stomach now.
Oh, I could still stomach them. I just don't.
The what is it? The sweet and sour chicken.
Oh,
That is just.
peanut butter chicken. You ever had peanut butter chicken?
No.
Oh, peanut butter chicken's phenomenal.
Is it?
You've never had peanut butter chicken at a
No.
Chinese restaurant?
No.
It's like breaded chicken, right? And then it's this like peanut, but it's so good.
But it's not like peanut butter. It's not like
No,
Skippy. It's Skippy? They're putting Skippy?
It's a peanut butter sauce, so it's not
Oh.
like the consistency of peanut butter. It's
Okay.
the consistency of like a sweet and sour sauce, but it's a strong peanut butter flavor. It's very good.
Interesting. See, I have.
It's incredible.
There are in every small town in this state, there is an upstart like burger joint that everyone goes to and flocks to for the first 3 months that it opens, and they always have a peanut butter and jelly burger. And I despise those places so much. I can't stand.
They're actually pretty good.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Jack, our resident, I believe this is Jack from Tennessee, the guy with the great voice, says only someone from the north puts beans in chili. Now, I am from the north. I'm born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, but I do know how to properly eat chili.
Omaha's the north now?
I mean, it's north of Texas and Tennessee.
Well,
it's
geographically,
northern. It's northern.
Yes. Fair.
We're in the northern
Right.
half.
We have to salt our drives in the winter. That makes sense.
Ken says white chicken chili. I don't know if he's pro or con, but white chicken chili is very good.
Yes.
I'll mess
White chicken
around.
chili is very good. It's the same thing. Turkey chili is also what we did.
Yeah.
Hunt your turkey.
Daniel says it's pretty much just like a melted peanut butter on the. It's really good.
It just sounds like Skippy. Unless it's a Scotcheroo, I'm just not really into.
It's
peanut
not
butter.
a Scotcheroo. It's so.
Well, I understand it's not a Scotcheroo, Ravi. I understand it's not a Scotcheroo.
You seem confused about the concept. I'm trying to help you out here a little bit.
I'm struggling to think that like if I'm going through my cabinet drawers at the end of the year, which hopefully if you've scheduled yourself well enough, you're like, okay, we have like a couple of ingredients here, but I don't know how to mash these together. I'm not going to grab chicken and peanut butter and be like, oh, I've got myself a meal.
Oh, I'd never try and make it at home. I think it's a Chinese delicacy. I could not.
That's why you wouldn't make it at home.
Well,
Chinese delicacy.
also I can't cook at all. But Roy says chili with beans is just bean soup. Yeah, I agree. Chili with beans.
I've never been attacked the way that I get attacked on this show. It's insane.
Welcome to DB's life every day.
No kidding. But his cold steak takes were nuts last week. I mean, make fun of my beans, but out of context, Shane, do not clip that.
Shane, clip it.
Do not
make fun of my beans.
but Damon's cold steak is crazy.
So I don't think it's as weird as it sounded. Because, he's just like taking a little nibble. Like he's just like, he's not taking an entire steak and just like chomping on it.
Yeah.
Like out of the bag or something.
He's not
he's got it like cut up. Think of it like deli meat.
Right.
It's just like fancy. Like you would eat roast beef. Like you would eat cold roast beef.
Yeah.
So like, you just kind of just a little slice.
Yeah.
Just a little taste.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do it. But I'll eat cold steak on like a salad.
Yeah. I'll do steak sandwiches.
Yeah, steak sandwiches are you can do it cold. So it's not that crazy.
I got in trouble over the weekend. I got caught. We were at my girlfriend's parents' house for just the first round of Christmases and stuff, and I got back and I was hungry. Everyone was in bed, so I went to the fridge. I've been dating this woman for 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm well integrated into the family, right? I don't have to ask for permission.
Yeah.
I don't think. I grabbed a piece of cold pizza and it was interrogation mode.
Really?
They were like, there were this many pieces.
Whoa.
And I was like, I'll fess up. I had one. They were like, oh, okay, no, not a big deal. And I was like, I felt like it's kind of a big deal.
Like a big deal.
Seems like someone was planning for 6 pieces to be there, and now there's 5.
If we're counting pieces of leftover pizza, it feels like a big deal.
And I just nabbed one. It wasn't like, I don't know. It was a big deal, but
Ken says, chili is like lovemaking. Some like it spicy hot, some mild, and everyone thinks theirs is the best. If this wasn't the last show before the break, it certainly would be now.
Yeah.
Also, not to put you on the spot here or anything, man, but 5 years, like crap, or get off the pot. Let's go. What's going on, bud?
Yeah, I mean, you tell me, dude.
Just
waiting on her to give me the go ahead. I keep getting the call signs, and I just keep showing bunt. That's all that I get, man. Like, what do you want?
You get caught stealing a lot?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? It's like the hit and run. You're like, oh, shoot, I missed the sign. Your guy gets thrown down at third. You're like, oh, my bad,
That's
bud.
on me. That's on me. I read the wrong one.
I didn't get the indicator.
I was looking in the stands. I was looking at you. My bad, coach.
Do we have any bets this week?
Can we figure something else out?
You want to put a future on when I'll put a ring on it?
Let's put a future on Austin's proposal. I'm gonna say over under July 2026.
26.
I mean, it's already been 5 years, man.
Right.
What do you want me to do?
I'll admit. Full context. Like I was living in Kearney. She was in Des Moines doing going through school.
Yeah.
So like we were distanced apart. Now we're just like we've been in it so long. We're like, why even?
That's what you love to hear about a relationship. We've been in it so long that we're like, meh.
Bet on it.
Bet on it over under July 2026. I got faith in you. I'm taking the under.
I'm going Notre Dame outright.
Sounds like he's taking the over. That's Bet on It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Tim Verghese coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show and wrapping up the year here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, our last segment of the year, and who better to have with Austin and myself than our friend Tim Verghese from inside Nebraska. Tim, how are you this morning, bud?
Hey, not too bad. How about y'all?
Oh, we're doing good. So no pressure. You're closing out the entire year of Hurrdat Sports Radio, so got to make it a banger.
Yeah, big news.
Tim, we have had some big news in the transfer portal for Nebraska, and that's the reason I wanted to have you on. I love your eye for talent and your scouting. So we've had some commitments over the weekend. First of all, out of the guys that have committed since you have been on last, which is, I think we've got 3 or 4 of them, who do you think can make the biggest impact for Nebraska next year?
Yeah, so I think I wasn't on between it's Isaiah Hunter and Deshaun McCullough. I think it's those two by far, in my opinion, in terms of who can give Nebraska the most in 2025.
So out of those two guys, the biggest area of need, was that wide receiver for you? Or I know some people got real nervous about the linebacker depth as well. Like, obviously, impact guys, part of it's on the talent of the player themselves, but part of it's an area of need. How has Nebraska addressed those?
Yeah, I mean, wide receiver. I mean, I kind of after Isaiah Hunter, I kind of think the wide receiver room is pretty addressed, and I would say, you know, if they're able to get anything more, you know, we're still awaiting a decision from Dane Key. We could see a couple more visitors here in the second and third phase of the transfer portal. You know, kind of these visits. And so I think, you know, we could see some more, but at this point, I feel like it's all complimentary and purely like icing, you know what I mean? Kind of on top of like what you have right now. Because I think you feel good about the wide receiver room with led by Isaiah Hunter, Ja'Cory Barney's still in there, Jalen Lloyd's in there, Janarin Bonner's in there, Carter Nelson, Quinn Clark, you know, the list goes on. If you feel better about that room with the addition of a guy like Isaiah who can kind of take over that wide receiver one, that big body outside receiver role, knowing what you have across the rest of that room and knowing, you know, kind of how Dana Holgorsen likes to use wide receivers, running backs, and just the skill positions in general in the passing game.
So you brought up Hunter, the big-bodied wide receiver. I kind of envision him in what Nebraska sort of hoped Jamal Banks would be, and kind of what we saw flashes of Jamal Banks at during times of the season, especially a little bit later in the year after Holgorsen took over. But what's Nebraska getting from McCullough?
McCullough's a versatile chess piece in the defense. I mean, that's the best way to put it. He's a guy that I loved him out of high school just because, you know, it kind of felt like everyone was looking for the next Isaiah Simmons at the time when he was coming out of high school, and he felt like that guy. And, you know, he's developed. I think he's had an interesting college career, kind of going from Indiana to Oklahoma and, you know, kind of the stops along the way in his development. You know, he's a guy that can play anywhere from Jack in Nebraska's defense to either of both the linebacker spots to potentially even Rover. You know, he's a guy that I think John Butler is going to find a lot of creative ways to kind of utilize him across the defense. He's a guy you kind of, you know, in the Big Ten with some of these matchups you get, you know, some of these elite tight ends you could potentially see in the conference. He's a guy that can kind of, you know, line up with those guys, can line up with the receiver potentially, but also cover his own ground, you know, in the run game, cover space in zone coverage, and he can rush the pass a little bit. I'm actually intrigued to see how much Nebraska uses him as a pass rusher because there's some flash there, but I just want to see, you know, exactly how much Nebraska is going to use it. But that, like, you know, like you mentioned, I think addresses a key need there where, you know, there's some concern about at least the linebacker depth because you have some talented guys coming in like Christian Jones and Dawson Merritt and Pierce Mooberry, but obviously those guys are young and you know, you needed an instant impact kind of guy. Deshaun's that guy.
Tim, when it comes to the newest additions to the roster, there's always been that conversation about what Rule sees as his recruitment base and the type of guys that he wants on the team. Have you noticed similar characteristics, maybe in talent, evaluation, just who these guys are in newcomers to the program, that maybe they have a similar trait or something that Rule sees similar to all of these new pieces?
Yeah, I think regardless of position, whether it's, you know, Marcos Davila, the backup now expected to be, you know, the backup quarterback, to Justin Rhett, to Deshaun McCullough, and even, you know, some of the D-line additions, they're adding athletes. I mean, these guys are really, really good athletes. You know, we talked all year about it felt like there were times in certain positions Nebraska felt like they had an athletic deficit. They're addressing that just by you know, at the very least, what you can say about all these guys is they're very good athletes, you know, and I mean, a perfect example, you know, with Justin Rhett, you know, I don't really know what to expect from him. He kind of was limited even as a senior in high school. Then he hasn't played much over the past 2 years at Georgia. So, you know, it's a guy that with a lot of clay to work with, a lot of raw tools and a lot of raw athleticism, but who knows how much exactly how much Nebraska is going to be able to get out of him. But at the very, very base, he's a very, very good athlete.
We're talking with Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Tim, as you're kind of going through the areas of need and checking off boxes, you go, okay, they've added a few guys on the defensive line. They're probably good there. They've added at least, you know, a couple linebackers. You feel like they're okay there. You mentioned they shored up wide receiver. They've shored up some of the specialists on special teams. In your mind, what's left here? Basically corner and offensive tackle? Is that about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, offensive tackle is the biggest need, and you know, it's not for a lack of trying. Obviously, you know, if people have been following, you know, obviously who they've had in town. Obviously, Isaiah World was in town, but Nebraska lost out to Oregon. It's tough to beat out Oregon for, you know, instant impact type players right now. They had Keegan Trost, the swing tackle from Wake Forest, visit, but he committed to Missouri after visiting Nebraska and Missouri. And then they had the Washington State transfer offensive tackle in town too. We're still awaiting his decision and what he ends up doing. But he visited Michigan. You don't really feel good. There's some waning confidence now from Nebraska. So I think that's a position that over this next week, when visits are shut down for the holidays, visits restart Jan 1st. But while the visits are shut down, quote unquote shut down, I think it's going to give the staff a good opportunity to kind of sit down, evaluate the talent in the portal, and really attack with, some decisiveness on like, okay, here's who we need. Here's what we need specifically at offensive tackle. And then honestly, like I could see them addressing corner. I think safety is a bigger need in the secondary right now. I think they'd like to add a veteran safety or two. And again, they had a guy like Marquavius Moss from West Georgia, a talented guy that can play, a couple of different positions in the back end of the defense this year. But he committed to Kansas State instead. So I think that's a position you're going to see them try and address coming out of the dead period, this short little, week and a half dead period.
Tim, how much does the status of like a Turner Corcoran and a Teddy Prohaska have to do with how they feel about offensive tackle? Is that something you think they may not address until the spring in that second period where after they get a chance to see those guys again?
Maybe, but I also think that's a position you can't really afford to wait and see what happens. If you can find a guy that can come in and start, you swing, and that's the reason why they had Isaiah World on campus and Lilly from Washington State. I think both those guys are instant impact guys that would almost certainly start at Nebraska. And so that's the thing. I think they're looking for guys, and I think they would also, I think guys like Teddy and Turner would understand, like, hey, where Nebraska is right now, they need instant impact guys, especially considering both those guys' health status. Specifically Turner, you would like another quality. You could move him inside potentially. And with Teddy, it's kind of a wait and see thing on how serious that injury is and how well he's able to recover because, at this point, having that many injuries in a row at his size, we just don't know what he's going to end up looking like.
Tim, are you expecting any more special teams looks? They got the long snapper. They've continued to look through other pieces in the portal. But is there any other piece that Ed Foley or Matt Rule is still looking at when it comes to the portal as of today?
I don't think so. I mean, I really think, listening to the way the staff talks about John Holt and still, what they still believe about Tristan Alvano, I think, I don't think that the kickers are going to be a position they address necessarily, but who knows? If a good one pops up and there's one that makes sense, I could definitely see them, at least covering their bases and making sure they do their due diligence. But right now, I think they're good where they're at, and honestly, I think they've seriously improved the special teams just functionality.
Tim, I had a question in the chat, more of a process question than anything, but like, does all this, the transfer portal and everything, does that make your job more fun? Do you like all the activity, or is it just kind of like, this sort of feels like a chore?
No, I mean, it's fun in a way of just like getting to track all these different names and, see where guys land, I think more as like it's a bit chaotic right now, I'll say, obviously, and I think more than anything at this point, it's I like the transfer portal and kind of what it can do for guys, but at the same time, I think there needs to be just a serious adjustment to the calendar. Like, this is too much for, some coaching staffs and even recruit. Like, more than anything, I feel real bad for some of these recruiting staffers that are basically working, like 12 to 15 hour type days, balancing watching film and making sure the board is a very fluid board right now in the transfer portal. This isn't like recruiting where you add guys to the board, you get an opportunity to host them on campus, you wait and see what they decide, and you slowly make adjustments to the board. Every single day the board's adjusting. You can offer a kid one day, the very next day, or very next day, very same day, he could commit elsewhere. All of a sudden he's off your board. It changes so fast.
Tim, we appreciate it as always. Great to have you on, and hope you enjoy your holidays, and we'll talk to you in 2025.
Yes, sir. Always a pleasure. Happy holidays.
Thanks, man.
Thanks,
you
Tim.
too. That's Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. That's Austin Jacobsen. I'm Ravi Lulla. Shane, appreciate you as always. This has been Hurrdat Sports Radio. We will see you on the 2nd.